Mr. Mayor, it's 5 o'clock. Are we ready to begin?
We are ready to begin.
Recording in progress.
I always like hearing that confirming voice. Let's see. So good evening all, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Petaluma City Council and Petaluma Community Development Successor Agency for May 18th, 2026. As always, if you wish to put in a comment card, if you wish to speak on any item in the agenda. Wow, that's a lot of speakers. Please fill out a speaker card. They're in the back of the room, and bring it to our clerk, who is here in the front of the room, so we can include you. And I'd like to note that we do concurrent translation, and you can find that either on the agenda that you have or on a QR code at the back. And with that, I'd like the clerk to call roll for the evening.
Barnacle?
Present.
Gator Thompson?
Here.
DeCarly?
Here.
Now?
Here.
Quint?
Here.
Shribs?
Here.
McDonald?
Here.
And we do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And a moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, I look up and down the dais and see if any council member wishes to change the order of any item on the agenda tonight. And seeing none, we'll, by acclaim, adopt this agenda that you see in your hands out there and move to one of my favorite parts, which is proclamation. And this is National Public Works Week, and so I'd like to invite our Director of Public Works, Paul Cashal, to the podium while we read National Public Works Week, May 17, 23 of 2026, and the whole team. And whereas the City of Petaluma Public Works Department staff serves the community with dedication, professionalism, and integrity, and whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facility, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the City of Petaluma. And whereas the theme for 2026 National Public Works Week is Rooted in Service, Powered by Community. And whereas the City of Petaluma Public Works staff helps improve the community's strength and quality of life by working together to maintain and operate city streets, sidewalks, traffic signals, and streetlights, to plan and implement safe streets and capital improvement projects, to review and oversee public infrastructure improvements associated with new development, to manage the Petaluma Marina and Airport, and to deliver public transit and mobility programs. And whereas, as part of our One Petaluma team, engage collaboratively and enthusiastically with all stakeholders in capital projects, infrastructure solutions, and the quality of life services. And whereas the support of an understanding and informed community is vital to the effective operation of public works systems and programs, and whereas their service is steadfast during emergencies, pandemics, droughts, and storms, and supports our city's collective adaptability to address the climate crisis, and whereas their commitment and passion for the work they do in the community they serve is profound, with their impact resonating in every corner of our lives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Kevin McDonald, Mayor of Petaluma, along with all the members of the Petaluma City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th to 23rd, 2026, as National Public Works Week in the City of Petaluma, and call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with our Public Works Department and to appreciate the vital role played by these important public works professionals in shaping our collective future and in contributing every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Thank you all.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and community. Thank you so much for this recognition and the proclamation. My name is Paul Cottrell. I'm the Director of Public Works. I'm joined here by some of our Public Works leadership team, and it's our honor to receive this on behalf of our hardworking and dedicated Public Works staff. I wanted to touch on two things in honor of Public Works Week. First, I wanted to touch on this year's theme, which the mayor mentioned a moment ago. Each year, the American Public Works Association develops a theme for National Public Works Week, and I wanted to read from that because it resonates and it speaks to what we're about here in Petaluma, so I'll go ahead and read from part of it. This year's theme, Rooted in Service, Powered by Community, acknowledges that the roots of service run deep in public works. It's what has propelled public works innovations that have helped our communities evolve into places where people can lead lives of purpose and possibility. Some work, like building roads and bridges, is highly visible, while other public works contributions are sometimes hidden from view. Together, these efforts form the foundation of thriving communities, reminding us that every project, seen or unseen, powers the connection between service and the people it supports. And second, I wanted to acknowledge our friends and colleagues in the Water Resources and Utilities Department. Our work is similar in many ways, and it's intertwined, right? And we can't perform our work effectively without them. So while we're accepting this on behalf of Public Works, we also share it with our friends in Water Resources and Utilities. Thank you.
Next, we have our Emergency Medical Services Week. And I'd like to invite Melissa Leonelli, our EMS coordinator, to the podium to accept. And are you bringing the team? Who wants to come? Thank you. And this is Emergency Medical Services Week, May 17th to 23, 2026. Whereas emergency medical services are a vital public service, providing life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at a moment's notice, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. Whereas the Petaluma Fire Department provides first responder EMS care as well as the continued treatment and transport of the sick and injured by basic and advanced life-saving support ambulances staffed with cross-trained firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics. And whereas members of the department provide exemplary care in the face of hazards, personal sacrifice, and profound responsibilities to serve their communities. And whereas each May there is a national recognition of EMS workers with the theme of this year's Emergency Medical Services Week being Improved Outcomes Together. And whereas all past, present, and future Petaluma Fire Department EMS providers are recognized and appreciated for their continued dedication and service to our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Kevin McDonald, Mayor of Petaluma, along with all the members of the Petaluma City Council, in recognition of the people who provide this vital care, do hereby proclaim May 17th to 23rd, 2026 as Emergency Medical Services Week in the city of Petaluma, and urge all residents to support the public safety activities and efforts of Petaluma's first responders. Thank you.
So I'll be brief because we barely got these folks here in time today. But it's my honor to accept this on behalf of all the men and women who commit their lives to caring for others. At a moment's notice, they're there to answer the call every minute of every day, sacrificing their own time to do so. They put service above self and serve our community proudly. Thank you for recognizing all that they do and for acknowledging their selfless service to others.
Thank you. This should be the community awards night here. There's so many good ways to serve our community, and I appreciate meeting and seeing all, including our next proclamation for Affordable Housing Month. And I'd like to invite Allie Gaylord of Generation H to the podium to accept the proclamation, which reads, Affordable Housing Month, May 2026, Whereas affordable housing is one of the cornerstones of democracy, and communities thrive when all families have a place to call home. And whereas each year families in Petaluma struggle to find affordable home in one of the most expensive housing markets in the nation. And whereas affordable housing is an essential element of our equitable fire recovery. And whereas the City of Petaluma's Housing Action Plan supports the construction of 1,910 affordable housing units over 8 years. Okay. Not this year. Whereas the city is committed to safe, stable, and affordable housing for all residents. And whereas the strength of Petaluma's community and economy depends on providing access to housing options that allow current and future residents of all income levels and ethnicities to live where they work. And whereas organizations throughout Petaluma are dedicated to providing safe, stable, permanent, and affordable housing for all members of the community, and collaboratively are working to bring the need for affordable housing to the forefront of discussions in Petaluma. Whereas these organizations are encouraged to partner with local agencies and community members to recognize Affordable Housing Month, which supports the sharing of best practices, opportunities, and solutions to provide affordable housing that is the right of all individuals. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Kevin McDonald, Mayor of Petaluma, along with all the members of the City of Petaluma Council, do hereby proclaim May 2026 as Affordable Housing Month in the City of Petaluma. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor McDonald, council members, and staff. I'm Allie Gaylord here on behalf of Generation Housing. We want to thank the City of Petaluma, the City Council, and the City staff for proclaiming May as Affordable Housing Month. Petaluma's commitment to affordable housing is showing up in real results through preservation efforts and new developments like 414 Petaluma, Washington Commons, and the Meridian at Petaluma North Station. These projects and others like them mean stability, opportunity for the workers, families, and seniors who call Petaluma home. As an aside, when I first started working on my first affordable housing project within Petaluma in 2018, we were so excited. We didn't need any support from EMD groups because Petaluma is already yes in my backyard and already wants to take care of those who are more vulnerable and less fortunate. Petaluma has made a meaningful funding and policy decisions in order to create affordable housing in the city, and we appreciate the leadership and collaboration that it takes to move these efforts forward. We look forward to continuing to work together to ensure everyone in our community has access to a safe and affordable place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to general public comment. And during general public comment, the public is invited to make comments on items of interest that are within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction, but that are not listed under any current part of our agenda. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes, and depending on the number of people wishing to address the council, time will be allocated in equal shares, totaling no more than 20 minutes. And with that, I'd like to ask our clerk if we've had any emails in on general public comment.
We did receive one general public comment, which is posted online, and I have a few cards, but at this point I will start a 30-second clock. And during these 30 seconds, members of the public should bring their speaker cards to my desk if they have not already done so. Speaker cards received after the 30 seconds may not be accommodated.
We have 4 speakers tonight, so we'll be setting our clock at 3 minutes. And our first speaker tonight will be Dan Barry, to be followed by Kathy Myers.
Good evening. My name is Dan Barry, Petaluma resident for 31 years. Live in Westridge Knolls with my wife. We've raised 2 children here, so we feel pretty strong about Petaluma, and that's why I came here tonight. I don't have any gripes. I have praise because I'm a Rotarian. I'm not like in the core committee with the president and Lena Furlong. Royce Van Beber, the people who are really driving the Spirit of Petaluma Beacon. So at the south end of town, before the boulevard goes under the freeway, an art installation is going in, and I'm just ecstatic about it. And the support that we've received from the people on the council, but not only the council, but Public Works, building, water, everybody has been so supportive of this that I'm just blown away, because I have friends in Texas, where my roots are, whose city councils, they're so divisive and non-supportive of anything, whether it's good or bad. It immediately becomes fractious, and I'm just so happy that we can live here and people can voice their comments, but everybody is generally positive about something, which is public art going in, and the Rotary is paying for it with donations. And I'm just so pleased about that, that I had to come here on my way to another meeting to thank everybody who's involved. And I know there were other people here that were also involved. So appreciative of Petaluma. The other thing, since I have time to do two things, so I was on Leadership Petaluma, which everybody knows what that is. I bet they did these posters on the wall. Leadership Petaluma, great program. I was on Leadership in 2022/23, and we raised money as our group project to put in Darrow bike fix-it stations. So we got donations, raised our own money, and we had enough to put in 4 stations that we paid for. And then the city kicked in as part of Climate Ready Petaluma. They kicked in and bought a 5th one. So we installed 4 of those things. So Kavanaugh Center, Mary Isaacs Center, Lucchese, and also the Smart was the 4th one that went in, Downtown Smart. But it's been a year and a half, and we haven't installed the 5th one. So I know I just met Jeff, and we're going to talk to Bourne, but we'd really like to get the 5th one installed so we can be done with it. These things are beautiful. They're a stand, so you can put your bike up on this stand, and then there's tools attached. So I actually have the tools in the trunk of my car in case Bjorn ever called and said, we're putting it in today, can you install the tools? So the tools that hang on cables, I'd love to get them out of my trunk and hang them, and we want to do the Petaluma Smart North Station, and then we'll have the symmetry across town. So I appreciate anything you guys could do, maybe grease the wheels on that. Have a nice evening. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Kathy Myers, to be followed by Sandra Shen.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Myers. I'm on the Senior Advisory Committee. Our chairman, Nicola Fry, couldn't come tonight, but she did write a letter that is sent to all of you and the staff, so you could take a look at that for more details. It sort of highlights the project that's been ongoing. Nicola and Don Foreman, who is on our committee, have been working hard to look at creative ways to solve the problem that we do not have a public restroom downtown. It's become a kind of a crisis as we get older. It limits some of the time we could spend downtown, and it affects not only seniors, but people of all ages, especially people with families, young children. Little Billy says, I have to go. You better find some place for him. Our city proudly supports age-friendly principles, and this should be a possible solution. One of the things that Nicola suggested and Don suggested is to look at an outfit called Throne Labs, with the idea of looking at a possibly cost-effective solution for public restrooms, and that is having standalone units. This particular organization, which is on YouTube, and you can check out their website, of course, has they install clean, monitored, self-contained, ADA accessible restroom facilities that include, well, it shows what it includes on the website. It's pretty fabulous. It deals with some of the concerns that people have when they hear the term public restroom. It's really novel solutions. I think it's very innovative. And it's kind of an all-in-one thing. Of course, it's a rental. The suggestion that, and they use the example of Ann Arbor, Michigan, which has a population of 120,000 people. They did a pilot program, and that would probably work somewhat for Petaluma to see how that works. Sort of a one-stop shop for maintenance, accessibility, safety, cleanup, and if there's any vandalism, which can happen, they have a system where they have a large wallpaper made of stickers that can be placed over any vandalism or tagging or whatever. It would certainly solve the problem for a lot of us who, such as myself, and...
Thank you. That's our 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. Am I done? Thank you.
But we have heard quite a bit and are motivated on this.
Yeah.
So our next speaker is Sandra Shan, to be followed by Tim Porteous.
Hello. It has come to my attention that some of my fellow Petalumans are fearful that the council and that you all have gone too far in standing up for human rights and civil rights and for all members of our community by joining the lawsuit, by fighting for what is rightfully ours, and by following the Constitution. This sentiment to me seems to be based in fear, and these fears are completely unbased in fact. The fear is that someone new is going to take something away, is going to hurt a resident in some way. This is based on misperceptions and purposeful misinformation. Disinformation and hateful rhetoric about immigrants and refugees are everywhere. At American Friends Service Committee, the Quaker organization, and Global Refuge, they have statistics. Immigrants and refugees make the United States a better place. Not only is welcoming newcomers the right thing to do, it is also the smart thing to do. Get the facts. Regardless of someone's manner of entry, seeking asylum is a legal right, the corner of U.S. and international law. Studies have shown that rather than lowering wages due to competition, the immigrant workforce has instead supported higher wages for all populations. When we work toward equity, we work toward a better society for all. It's a total myth that refugees and immigrants take American jobs. With nearly 10 million unfilled jobs nationwide at a time of record low unemployment, immigrants are essential to filling in the gaps in the American workforce. Immigrants are also more likely to contribute to job creation than displacement. Immigrants and refugees in the U.S. fill essential positions at all skill levels. Immigrants are farm workers, hospitality workers, doctors, nurses, computer programmers, educators, architects, emergency services staff, and much more. 2.8 million immigrants in the U.S. in 2021, for example, worked in healthcare in the U.S. So please, as an agricultural county, we need to recognize that you are protecting our local economy by protecting jobs and the Constitution for all. Thank you for your stand of courage and for watching out for Sonoma County.
Thank
and
you.
Petaluma.
Our next speaker is Tim Porteous, to be followed by Christopher Stivic.
Three minutes. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. We, the residents of Youngstown, must continue to stand up for our rights, for the laws that are meant to be followed. We are shell-shocked at the extent park owners, management, and those who have aligned themselves with them will go to bring down senior citizens just to make the city look bad. The city has looked at all the issues, seen the broken laws and ordinances, and did what most cities might not have defended. The most vulnerable enforced the intent of RSOs put in place so many years ago. These type of business practices or other practices make our skin crawl. Irony is that this type of business owner management couldn't possibly realize that not everyone stands up for the vulnerable or for something in it for themselves. Loving their neighbor is not a language they know. The motive is more than crystal clear. Gouge, greed, intimidate, retaliate, senior abuse, bury those less fortunate in legal debt to get more money or to demand submission from the less fortunate. The question remains, is that the type of business management allowed to be a part of the businesses of Petaluma, the business of senior citizens? We think not. With us, say no to senior abuse. And this is right. You guys, you have stood up for us. And we thank you very much. And we know the battle is not over. Thank you. They're making it worse for us, just like they're making it worse for you. Their intent is a complete win. If they beat you and our supervisors, they beat us. They continue to roll with their incredible machine and take so many people's lives, futures, hopes. None of us want this. I don't want to be diagnosed any longer with high anxiety, extreme depression. I don't want this. You guys don't need this pressure either, and I'm sorry. It's here, and please continue with your bold help to us. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And Christopher Stivic.
Christopher Stivic here. This will be short and sweet. I would just like to endorse the mayor's committee to review the trestle. I have listed all of the times that there was promised to be a vigorous public outreach, which has never happened. We have it now, and I thank you.
Thank you. And that closes public comment for the evening. I'll bring it back up to council, and I'd like to start with Councilmember Barnacle tonight on recent activities.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Councilwoman Cater Thompson.
Okay. The mayor and I went to, and I just lost it on here, hang on a second, to an advanced quantitative precipitation information. And this is something new with the county. And it's this big sphere, and what it does, it looks for precipitation and lets us know if there's going to be any flooding. And that is separate from the FERO project, which basically lets you know when you should let water out of the dam. So it's two different pieces of equipment, but it's going to make it safer for the future. And when we know that there's flooding, we can go ahead and tell people where to move to. And usually it's road flooding unless it's a major flood, and then that would be a different situation. But it was a really interesting going and just learning about these advances, and it's all good for the public. As far as the water Public Works, I just really want to thank Public Works and actually our water department and everybody for all that you do. People have no idea how much you work. Yesterday there was a water break and somebody contacted me, and it was in my, close in my neighborhood in my district. I went down there and they had a great explanation. There was basically a break of a water main, and so they were doing a temporary fix, but people were without water for probably from early morning until 6 at night. And so it's just great that we have such good teams working together, and I thank everybody for that. And the emergency medical, we all thank you, because whenever there's an emergency and you come to our door, I'm talking about the paramedics, it saves lives. Affordable housing. Ally was here talking about affordable housing, and that's so important that people need to be housed. We're all housed in this room, but people that aren't housed, we need to start thinking of. And I also want to make a comment, Dan Barry, thank you very much for your comments, appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to getting that equipment out of your trunk. And so we'll go ahead and work on that. I'm sure the city staff heard, and so you'll be hearing from us. And I'm really grateful that it's going to be at the North Station, Fix-It Station. It's going to be great. Kathy Myers, I was looking at this, the throne online, and it is something, maybe this is an interim before we build something ourselves to at least have renting a bathroom. I don't know what the cost is, but it might be worth looking into. And Sandra Shan, thank you very much for your comments. And actually, Christopher Stivic also, having a committee for the trestle is a good thing, and I think it's a good committee that's being put together. And Tim, thank you always for coming.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Good evening, everyone. I don't have any specific liaison reports. The Airport Commission got canceled this month. However, we did reschedule for tomorrow night, and that's going to be here at 7:30 if anyone's interested in attending. At the end of this month, they are looking at closing down one of the taxiways for construction. It'll be closed for a period of 10 days or so. So if you're in the aviation world and that's going to affect you, now you know. But we're looking at possible remedies to mitigate impacts to the airport and people who use it and businesses there. So that will be tomorrow night. And then I want to give a shout out to one of our local businesses down at the Float House on May 9th. I wasn't able to attend, but I would have liked to. They did a little history cruise down the river with the museum. They partnered with them and did a little history tour while everybody paddled. And it's pretty cool to see that kind of stuff, to honor our heritage and look at what the river used to be. And then I hope everybody was able to attend Cruising the Boulevard last weekend and enjoy that. That's another great part of our heritage, cars and cruising downtown and celebrating American graffiti and all that makes Petaluma great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that too on the river. That's a really good event. Councilmember Now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, along with some city staff and Councilmember Cater Thompson, I attended the Zero Waste Symposium on May 7th. This all-day event emphasized redesign, reduce, reuse, rot, and recycle. Love the newly added words like rot for compost and redesign for packaging and marketing. Do you know the dangers of electronic cigarettes and vape devices, besides bad for our health and our teens? These devices, if not disposed of correctly, can cause fires, environmental hazards, etc. There's no established procedure or protocol, and too much improper disposal and indefinite storage of these devices. Hazardous, non-refillable e-liquid reservoirs, unremovable lithium-ion batteries, cheap unrecyclable plastic shell, all glued together components, costly and dangerous to disassemble. 5.9 vapes or seconds are disposed of and discarded in the U.S. Most devices contain a single pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine. 3,300 EV batteries worth of lithium are put in landfills due to this poor design. 194 million pieces of plastic generated annually in California from disposable vapes. The waste impacts are litter and pollutions, toxic leachate that gets into our lands and our waterways, the waste industry fires, and permanent plastics. So I learned all that in one day, and I thought I knew everything about zero waste. So we need to think about how we're going to move forward with these vapes, devices, and e-cigarettes, and it's very scary. As for the public comment from Jan Berry, the Bike Fix-It station, I think there's one at the library and the fairgrounds because I've used it with my grandchildren. And thank you, Dan, and your leadership class because they're very handy to have. And I support one at the North Station. Also, thank you for the Roundabout Public Art. And it's a great thing to see when you first enter Petaluma from our southern entrance. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Quint.
Hello, thank you. I don't have any new liaison reports since our last meeting, but I did have an opportunity to meet with staff last week to get a sneak peek at an update to the proposed transit changes. As many of you are aware, Maria Arce is now leading the transit team, and she and the rest of the transit staff weren't satisfied with the direction of the service reductions and wanted to see if they could get more creative. So they went to work on that. I got to see sort of a sneak peek of what they would be bringing to TAC tomorrow night at 6 p.m. So if that's a topic that you're interested in, I would encourage you to participate. And I think, maybe there will be some, creative stuff to mitigate some of the service cuts that we were talking about. I also had an opportunity to attend the Cruise in the Boulevard event and want to recognize a local business. My favorite vehicle in the show was the vintage Lace House linen delivery van. It's great when you see, a local business. I'm sure that van was delivering stuff however many years ago. And so it was a great piece of history and thought it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shribs.
Thank you. No committee reports at the moment. However, I did go to the 5-year anniversary for Relief, and they backed up the data of how many trees they've put in, over close to 500 trees in individual people's yards in the last year. But also we hit the 3,000th tree milestone. So that's on our way to 10,000 trees. So we're on our way. And still working through their grant through the rest of the year. I'm also working on e-bike rules and regulations. There's 9 bills going through the state right now. 2 seem to be may have gone away, not made it through a committee, but there's still lots of discussions going on. So if you're interested in e-bike rules and regulations at the state level and would like to come together, I'm working with a couple of the folks of the bike community to maybe put in a request just for what do we want here in Petaluma. So please let me know if you're interested. Then just on the public service, I've had 2 water breaks on my street, and they've came in and fixed them. So thank you, Public Works, for that. Next, of course, is going to be the surface of the road. That's going to be a while because that'll be delayed. I'm not even on the list, but yep, I've got to wait for others. But I'll get there. We will get there. There was in the agenda tonight in the consent calendar, there's a listing. We did get a grant for some crosswalks and for some other pedestrian crossings enhancements on some of the major roads. And there's been desks right at the corner near me, which is right on Sonoma Mountain Parkway. And that is one of the ones that's been targeted for improvement through a grant. So it's not city money, it's grant money that's doing this. So again, thank you for Public Works for getting that done. Then the other announcement wasn't announced last week. I was hoping it was, but I didn't hear it this week. But there was a article in the Press Democrat, especially from the North Bay, about the influential women in our county, and our very own city manager was announced as one of the main influential women of the county. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. And for my report, I helped Rebuilding do a ribbon cutting for their new housing. It's an old house, but new to them. They had a donor step up to help them with a purchase, and Rebuilding has taken over our downtown streets team, homeless folks getting back into employment, and this is how they'll keep them housed. So it's a real big step forward for Rebuilding and for the community. Also wanted to give a big shout out to COTS. They did their annual fundraiser this past weekend, and it was well attended and successful, but their cause this year is to get the family housing further. And that's one of the highest needs in homelessness right now is family housing. So both those organizations helping the city quite a bit. City staff, city manager, and others, and I did a presentation to the Latino leadership at the Cafe Puente. It's good to hear directly what the concerns in the community are. And transit floated to the top of that, and they also mentioned again how safe they feel in Petaluma relative to other areas of the county and beyond. I participated in a Know Your Rights meeting with the African community of Petaluma, hosted by the Secure Family Collaborative and the African Advocacy Network. That was an interesting meeting, and I got to help with the proclamation to beautify Petaluma and rebuilding, who were adding the new hanging baskets throughout downtown. And I got to judge a science fair over at Kenilworth. The theme was adding biodiversity, so that was topical and fun. And joined our friends out of the Coast Guard base for their program. They're a national training site for AST. I guess we shouldn't do abbreviations. Aerial Survivor Technician. It's helicopter rescue. They drop somebody from a helicopter, and they're graduating the first woman in 15 years for Coast Guard. So, go Petaluma. And attended the Chamber of Commerce showcase. It's impressive how much business is happening right here in Petaluma. And then, of course, the American Graffiti and Cruising the Boulevard was wonderful this weekend. And they donate $29,000 worth of AEDs, defibrillators, to our police department this year. And so it's really fun to have community groups like that. Also attended the monthly Sonoma County Mayor's meeting, and the impacts of the HR1 Big Beautiful bill, it's going to come down to they have killed the ACA. The cost to the county will be $100 million. The cost to the individuals, incalculable. And what that'll do on food assistance will also be horrible. And then lastly on my list was to congratulate our city manager on her award. And so one more time, thank you so much for bringing all you do to the city of Petaluma. And your report.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to leave it on that note. I don't have any reports, but thank you very much for allowing me to serve the city.
Well, thank you very much. And that moves us to our consent calendar. And so at this point, I look up and down the dais and see if anybody wishes to discuss or separate any of the consent calendar.
I just have a comment on number 4.
And we have a question, and please proceed with the question.
Once this is signed and agreed, when will the project start?
The crosswalk, that would be the master agreement administering state agreement for federal aid and program supplement agreements for crosswalks and signal improvements. And we're glad you're here tonight.
Good evening. Jeff Sussman, Deputy Director of Operations. So once this agreement's signed by Caltrans, it's ready to go out to bid. So you'll hopefully see in the next month or so. I guess it's going to take 3 or 4 weeks to put out to bid, and then you'll see it on a council item as we award it. So as soon as we can. So it's definitely going to happen this summer.
Thank you very much. This is going to be a huge improvement. I've been working or talking with people for Sonoma Mountain Parkway at Monroe, thinking it was going to be done earlier. So I will connect with this person and let them know it's actually really going to get done, because it's really scary crossing Sonoma Mountain Parkway, as a pedestrian. So I'm thrilled. I think there's 2 on Sonoma Mountain Parkway that are going to have the cages around them for safety. So this is great for the community, and thank you very much.
Yeah, it's two existing upgrades of just like we did on McDowell, and then 1 new one at the actual trail crossing for Lynch Creek.
Okay, there's one other area I want to mention since we have this list, and it's right across the street from the Safeway Shopping Center, closer to the, it's the first entrance into the Safeway Shopping Center from McDowell, and you take a left. If you can look at that area to see how we could make that so it's safe for the residents on the west side to actually cross to the east side and back and forth. It's really a long, expansive area. A lot of people live there, and it's pretty dangerous. So if we can just have a look at that and maybe get some movement on it. or something, because it's close to McDowell, so I just want to know what can be done, and hopefully something will be done. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. And I think with that, we move to public comment on the item, on the entirety of the consent calendar.
We did receive one comment on item number 3, which is posted online, and I don't have any cards yet, but at this time, I will start a 30-second clock. Maybe. So if anyone would like to submit a card for the consent calendar, this is the moment. No one rushing.
Not seeing anybody rush to the front. We will close public comment on the consent calendar, bring it back to the dais.
I'll move that.
We have a motion by Cater Thompson.
I'll second.
And a second by Now. And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
DeCarly?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Quint?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you. And that brings us to public hearings, matters for consideration. It's the first reading of an ordinance of the City Council approving temporary construction easements and permanent public utility easements and authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary for the PIPS Parallel Force Main project, which I'm sure we'll get an acronym breakdown for. And I'd like to invite up Lucas Pereira to speak to the issue.
Hi, good evening, Council. Name is Lucas Pereira, Assistant Engineer in Public Works, and I believe we have an actual mini presentation for you guys on this item. It's only 2 slides, so not that crazy of a presentation or too long, but it would just help give a visual for what we're trying to acquire. All right, so the visual looks a little bit similar to the one that we showed in the budget meeting last week. And we just have a couple more modifications to focus on the item that you guys have in front of you, the easement acquisitions. So to start with the PIPS acronym, so PIPS stands for the pump station itself. It's the primary influent pump station. So that is actually the pump station facility. And our project is the construction of a parallel force main that leaves the pump station and goes to Ellis Creek. And that would carry essentially all of the city's sewage that's collected by the sewage system. And as part of the project, early on, we identified a number of easements that would need to be acquired for us to be able to deliver the project. Fortunately, we have the actual alignment of the pipeline itself being located in within the boundaries of the existing easement that we have for the existing pipeline. So most of the acquisitions that we need to make are actually for temporary construction easements, or TCEs, as you might see in the staff report. And the need for those is primarily for, even though our pipeline is located in the existing easement, for you to be able to actually do construction, excavate, have equipment moving around, stockpile spoils or soils from the excavation. All of that within a 30-foot easement is quite difficult. So the TCEs that we're trying to acquire basically to allow us to have access in a private property, to have construction workers, materials stored, equipment while we're performing construction. And we do also have a couple easements that are permanent easements for the pipeline to go, and that's only in 2 or 3 areas. So most of the acquisitions that we have are for temporary construction easements that only last during the construction phase. I think we can, so on the slide there, we kind of show it's maybe not crazy big, so I'm not sure how clear it is for you guys to see it, but the easements that we're showing are in the blue boxes, the blue rectangles, and you can see it's spread out through the alignment of the project, but most of it, like I said, is just temporary construction easements, and primarily as we approach the Schollenberger Park and the Ellis Creek, there's a lot of commercial building properties there on Cypress Drive, and that's where we have a lot of those TCEs. And before on the western side, there's also easements along more on the left side of the photo, with Caltrans, with SMART, which is the 101 crossing the SMART tracks. And then Sonoma Water is the property right adjacent to it, at McDowell Creek. And then the Marina Apartments, and then we start heading towards the rest of the alignment, which we don't need a lot of TCEs for, because the red is the alignment of the parallel force main. So that is just a visual for you guys to see where those are located. And on the next slide, we have just a zoomed in version of one of those blue boxes. Oh, yeah, there's a little animation that we added there. So that's just an example of a TCE, which is the blue box, a little narrow 10-foot wide area. And like I said, we have the pipeline going within the existing easement area, which is a little pink box. And we just have performed appraisals, made offers to the property owner so that we can have access, basically. That's what the TCE is for, is right to have access to a private property and be there while we're constructing the pipeline. And that's pretty much the gist of the item that you guys have in front of you. And I'm open here as well for any questions that you may have.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Any questions from the council? Councilmember Shribs?
Yeah, as we lay down the pipe, are we going to be, is the whole thing going to be trenched so that lifting out and then put the pipe down, put the dirt back, or is it going to be drilled in and inserted? Which technique is being used?
Both.
Both.
So I believe we have 4 trenchless sections that they're going to be micro-tunneled. First one is going underneath the smart tracks. And then the second one is going underneath just a little bit to the east of it, going underneath the actual Sonoma Water or McDowell Creek, which is Sonoma Water property. Those are 2 areas that you can't obviously open cut since you have active tracks and a creek. And then further in the alignment also, we're going to cross Adobe Creek. That's further east, closer to Ellis Creek. And then the last one is where we're crossing 4 feet in diameter storm drain pipes. So those are 4 sections that we have trenchless operations. That's just a more cost-effective way to install the pipeline if you can't physically open cut an area for either sensitive areas from an environmental standpoint or infrastructures like a track. And then the rest is open cut. So typical trenching, excavation, and backfilling.
Okay, so this is part of the easements that we need because it's going to disrupt the parking areas in some of those businesses. And you said there's a need for easements. Is there any possible roadblocks, literally, or legal things about getting these easements from all these companies, or already have agreements?
So on the TC, so to answer, it's a 2-part question partially. On the TCEs, they're not a must-have. They're a nice-have. Like an example here on the one on the slide, we could work within the boundaries of the existing easement if we found we couldn't reach an agreement with the property owner to acquire the TCE. So not simplicity, but to make construction more practical, realistic, and cost-effective from an actual construction standpoint, we're attempting to acquire the TCEs. Those are just for more practicality and to have room to do construction. So if there were a roadblock, as you mentioned, and we could not reach an agreement, I think we have the legal routes for eminent domain, but that's not on the table right now because we haven't come to that point. Out of 9 TCEs, there's 3 that have been signed, other 3 that are being reviewed and to be signed by the property owners. And the other ones, a lot of the negotiations, if you will, aren't on actual cost. They're primarily on how can we help offset the impacts during construction. So to some of the properties, we actually are going to do night work because we would be impacting too much of their day-to-day operations. So we took that into account and said that makes sense. It's not possible for both of us to be using the property at the same time. We'll do night work. We agreed to it and we moved on. As far as easements, Marine Apartments is the only property, so it's actually a public agency as well. It's the California State University Trust that owns it, and they've been great partners. They've already sent us the easement document that they use. Our city attorney's office team reviewed it. They even admired how fair of an agreement it was, that we should take that and perhaps use in the future. So we haven't encountered anything that would be a roadblock, and the only ones that, to kind of close my thought, that would be a must for us to deliver the project would be permanent easements. And so far with those, we have acquired it from SMART. We're in the process of acquiring from SMART, and we're in the process of acquiring from the Marine Apartments as well. So it's been a success so far.
Good. Just want to check in the extra work that has to get done to get this all done. Thank you for doing all that.
Yeah.
Do you happen to have a slide showing where in Ellis Creek? Because I've got with the nonprofit I work with, they're out there very often, almost daily, some of them. And is the pipeline going to go underneath the actual dikes, or is it going to be going through the lower elevations? Do you have a diagram showing exactly where it's going so I can tell these folks?
We do, as part of the plans, if you can go on the previous slide, it's not going to show anything too closely. But, so you're talking about, I assume, further there, just the end of the red section of the alignment, as you're going between
just going through the mouse.
Between the polishing wetlands?
Yeah, as it transitions through that area. So the exact route, is it going through using the dike and then at the base of the dike, or is it coming into the lower areas?
It varies a little. We do have the plan and how deep we're going to go and exactly where we're going to go. It follows, for the most part, because we were looking at that recently, the trail, not at all times, because there was a balance that we had to do between the practical area that's like stable for a trenching operation while staying away from actual like wetlands, not Ellis Creek wetlands, but seasonal wetlands that are more from a water board and California Fish and Wildlife sensitive areas. So we had to do a dance of avoiding those areas while making sure we're not also impacting infrastructure that we have. So we follow the trail for the most part, but it's not a precise.
So, I'm just sorry, we're getting a little abstract. So can I suggest that you clip that plan sheet, annotate it slightly, and add it to the agenda as the last attachment here?
Absolutely.
Just so I can share it with my contingency.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Councilmember Cater Thompson?
I just have just a quick question. So when you're talking about the trail, is that from Schollenberger Park to Ellis Creek? That trail is what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So is it on the trail or to
It's offset from the trail. So it's below the trail for the most part. It does, like I mentioned, we do have some dodges that you steer away from it. It's hard to see on the visual that I have, so I think the sheets that I can follow up with would clarify. But for the most part, it follows the trail the walking trail that we have.
So is there going to be any improvements on the trail because it floods in the wintertime?
Nothing that would look different than the way it is right now. Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to move this.
Let's go to public comment. And do we have any comment on this?
We did not receive any public comments on this item, and I do not have any cards yet, but this is the moment.
And seeing no one stepping forward, we'll close public comment and bring it back.
I'll move this.
And we have a motion by Cater Thompson.
I'll second.
We're going to say second by Now. And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
DeCarly?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Quint?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lucas. Great presentation. And now we move to item 7, which is the proposed fiscal year 26-27 City of Petaluma budget. Adopting the city's budget resolution, adopting a resolution updating the full-time authorized and funded position schedule, and an introduction first reading of the fiscal year 27 city appropriations ordinance. To help us with that, we have Corey Garbarolio, Assistant Director of Finance, to walk us through.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald and council members. Each year, the budget must be presented by fund, department, and prepared and submitted to the City Council by the first meeting in May. The proposed budget was delivered to you at the meeting held on May 4th, followed by a budget workshop held on May 11th, where we went over the budget document. Based on your feedback, at the workshop, we have made one change to the fiscal year 27 budget before bringing it to you this evening. We've increased the funding for the downtown bathroom project from $180,000 to $350,000 to provide sufficient funding to bring the project to completion. That project is funded by Petaluma Tourism Improvement District revenues in the current year, and additional funding is set aside in fiscal year 28. No other changes have been made. Any other recommended graphical edits will appear in the final budget document. The budget before you this evening totals $400.5 million across all funds, of which $85.3 million is for the general fund and is committed to furthering goals and priorities that you have set. So with that, tonight we are recommending the City Council consider the recommended fiscal year 26-27 budget, adopt the resolutions authorizing those budgets, and introduce the appropriation ordinance. And staff are here available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I did have two quick questions, if I could. It's a tight budget year this year, and I think we're all feeling the stress of it. When do we see you again?
So you'll see me at the first quarter budget adjustment. So that's likely in September-ish.
Thank you. And then the second part is, do we get an update on the closure of 26? I think is there a meeting that addresses that?
We normally bring that forward with a mid-year, so that wouldn't happen until December. But if we have an update that we can provide at the first quarter, that works as well.
Okay, those are my questions. And seeing no other questions, let's open it to public comment.
We did have 2 comments on this item, and those are posted online. And I do have 1 card. If there's anyone else who would like to submit a card to speak on this item, now's the moment.
Darren Rackison.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, City Clerk. I'll wait for my 3 minutes to, not going to steal the extra time here. Here we go. So really quick, I want to do a summary of my comments from last time and really leave the salient questions that I'm not sure came through and kind of all the information I was spitting out. And I think the core concern of my, or not concern, just the core thing I was looking at when looking at the budget was right now our internal IT costs are about $4 to $4.5 million a year. As part of that number for the past couple of fiscal years includes Tyler Eden Technologies, about $300K a year to keep the current ERP system going. And that's like the behind the scenes utility billing, managing benefits, employee time tracking, stuff like that. So we've been paying an old vendor $300K a year as part of this $4 to $4.5 million IT budget. And then on top of that, we've been implementing a new ERP for like $1.5 or $2 million a year. And I think the big thing was, first of all, like how close are we to being complete? It sounds like we're going to have a 2-vendor solution, one for utilities, one for finance. And from the budget document, it sounded like Spry Point was the utility solution. And so do we have a solution in place for the finance side? Because I think originally the past director, Jessica Gooch, was kind of spearheading it, and she was in finance. So I'm curious where that effort stands. And then for the Tyler Eden component, the existing vendor who we still have to pay because we still need an ERP, does that expire in June? I think that was the timeline from past budgets, was end of fiscal year 25-26 that wraps up. So again, in the effort to find things that are like within our control, things we might be able to tighten up on, or maybe it's something where we're right on track and we're about to have that cost moved off the books with a successful implementation. But just wanted to summarize that again. Thank you.
We have one more card, Don Foreman.
Hi, everyone. Didn't have a whole lot to say. You guys have got emails from me over the years, and I don't want to waste a whole lot of your time, but we do need the bathroom still. Thank you.
Thank you. And that closes public comment. And bring it up to council. And I'd like to ask staff if we could hear a little the status of ERP. I know I've done one of these at a major municipal agency, and they're difficult. It would be the kindest thing to say. So what's our current status?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Happy to provide a brief update. So we did let the initial contracts for our ERP software installation in the fall of 24. A cadre of city staff as well as consulting staff that we hired to implement that project began in earnest in December of 24. Worked through the early parts of the project, which you typically would be doing all of your process mapping, documenting all of your existing processes, cleaning your data, and importing or exporting the data out of the old system. So we did a lot of that work initially in the first half of 2025. We subsequently decided to take a bit of a pause for several different reasons, but we looked at the implementation schedule, the impact on staff was very fast implementation overall, and decided to kind of slow it down and take it in some pieces. So some things have been going on in the background. So the Spry Point that was referenced earlier, that is the utility billing software that is being implemented and being actively worked on. So our utilities and finance staff are very close to going live with that project, and I think our residents and utility customers will see that this summer going online and being active. We also continued moving forward with some of the human resources modules, which is actually in a different vendor software called NeoGov. We have an existing agreement with them to do recruitment management. So if you go on our jobs page, you'll see NeoGov there. But they also provide a variety of HR management products. And so we've gone live already with a couple of those additional modules for our HR management. And we have a few more that we will also be implementing over the next several months. The larger financials project, we are looking at that more closely to see what the best path forward is, including we're still in conversations with our existing vendor, Tyler, about the status of our old legacy software, Eden, as well as what their newer software would look like if we wanted to move forward with that. Have not come to any conclusions yet on that, but we are looking at what the best path forward is. And stay tuned because we will be back if we need to move forward with something on the Tyler front. But so we have been working on the modules that we felt would best serve us in the short term while looking at the longer horizon for the bigger financial package.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor.
I've got a question, well, 3 questions about it since we're talking. What is the expected savings with the new software? How long will it take to pay that off? And then what is kind of the expected useful life of it before we go to get new software or a new program?
Yeah, so on the first question, if we do move to a Tyler product, which is our existing vendor, we do expect a significant savings. I don't think we have that quantified down to the dollar yet, but it will be substantial compared to the full suite that we were looking at with the other.
Is there an approximate number?
I'm just throwing out over $1 million, but again, we need to actually dial in which specific modules we're talking about and what the long-term costs of those are, because with almost all of these packages, there's of course the upfront implementation cost, but then there's also the ongoing subscription cost that you're paying every single year. So we do have some numbers, but we're still in active conversation with Tyler about what that would look like. So we don't quite have finalized numbers for you at this point. And then I'm sorry, you had another follow-up.
Yeah, I was, how long is it going to take to pay that off, this switch over, and then how long do we expect that system to be in place for?
So we have already factored all of the ERP costs into the budget, and in fact, we're actually anticipating some of the savings. So we don't have to pay it off, so to speak. We have worked that into the overall budget picture. But I would say, not being an IT professional myself, but we have gotten at least 15 years, I would say, out of our existing software. So we would hope that we can get a decade or so out of a new system at a minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I want to commend you on staff on getting involved in this because it's such a challenge to transition from old systems. But I know the old systems no longer achieve what you wanted, and the new systems provide increased functionality and service, and that's like huge. The integration of various departments together is really cool. I hate that we have to sandbox 2 systems simultaneously. You have to keep running your old while beta testing all your new. So it's no wonder that there's an overlapping period, and we see that. And all that means staff resource doing 2 things during that transition period. So I think the way you've described scheduling makes a lot of sense there. Appreciate that clarity. And we've done public comment. We've had public comment answered. And now Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, on the The prior budget, we were just a few dollars short of a public restroom. Was there any ability to squeak out anything and move up the timeline for that to see if we can get it done?
So I believe in Corey's report, she mentioned that we increased it to 350.
Yeah, the overall budget increased from 180 to 350.
Okay. And then in terms of timeline, there we feel like now we've got the money, do we have the staff allocated to it to get it done?
We will be allocating staff to it now that we have the increased budget to be able to implement as quickly as possible. So I think in the initial proposal, we had it kind of finalize the design and then look for additional budget, right, to actually implement. Now that we with the 350, we believe we can deliver it with that amount. So we're going to assign staff to it, finalize the design, and put it out. I think what limits us, and I don't know what we found, and I'll look over to Jonathan to see on lead time what we found when we did the initial design and research, but I think that would be the limiting factor on lead time. Do you know, roughly? Okay, so 6 to 9 months. I mean, it'll take us probably a couple months to get our ducks in order, put something out to bid to procure it. So I think you're still looking at 10 to 12 months just based on that. No, if it's shorter, we'll implement it faster and we'll look at alternatives, but in short, we'll move forward and provide an update.
Okay. It would be amazing to check that off the list this year. I just want to say that. And if we need to put the order in right now so that we have it in 6 to 9 months and then we can get it done, let's do it. I don't think it's sort of a no regret purchase at this point as far as I can tell. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Now.
Paul, can I have you for just a quick question? While we're waiting for a new modern facility for people to relieve themselves downtown, can we negotiate with the property owner for a 6-month rental agreement? I know there's a new business going into the building and maybe work with him. Is it a possibility?
Thank you. Brian O, Director of Community Development. So I did talk to the owner. My understanding is he has already leased it out as part of the expansion for the soon-to-be coffee shop. And so there's already plans to use it as essentially storage. And so I don't know how much more we would pursue that at this point.
That's too bad that we can't negotiate some sort of a rental agreement, especially if it's only going to be used for storage, because it's right there in downtown Putnam Plaza. And a 6-month, I don't know how much it would cost to rent public bathroom space, but do you need us to make some phone calls?
If we had a willing owner, again, this was last week that I followed up, and if it isn't already being used for storage, it's, about to happen.
Okay, I'll see if I can't make some phone calls and maybe a bottle of wine. I don't know.
Well, thank you. Councilmember Quinn.
Just a crazy idea. Would it be possible to check with the new tenants to see if they would sublease it?
Not a crazy idea. I mean, again, we have contact. We're getting it's a brother and sister through I actually believe they already have their building permits, and so we do have that, and probably doesn't hurt to ask, so be happy to do so.
I would just note that we would need to figure out budget because I don't know what shape that those bathrooms are in at this point, and if they're going to be using it for storage, it makes me think that there's probably some demo work that's occurred, so that would take away from our current budget, so just balancing.
Thank you very much. It's not lost on council that that in a $400 million budget, the critical item is one downtown bathroom. That's, I think, a lot of credit to the public perseverance on that one. And do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And that is for several parts. There's several parts needed in here, which are the resolution for the positions schedule, and also the first reading of the appropriations ordinance. Yes, one motion for those two items, and that's the motion by Cater Thompson.
And I'll second.
And a second by Now. And a roll call vote, please.
Sure, just want to clarify that's the adoption of the two resolutions and the introduction of the ordinance, right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Barnacle.
Aye.
Cater Thompson.
Yes.
DeCarly.
Yes.
Now.
Yes.
Quint.
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, staff, everybody. I guess that's the whole company, isn't it? The budget. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 8, which is to conduct a public hearing, receive public comment, and provide feedback and adopt resolutions directing staff to prepare a final impact report and associated final general plan for adoption. To help us with this, we have our Community Development Director, Brian O., and Heather Hines, our Special Projects Manager, and friends who we appreciate seeing you all again, and we'll give you a minute now to set on. I'm thinking there's going to be a minute to build up. So.
Mayor, would you like me to begin?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Heather Hines, Special Projects Manager. I am just going to run through some of the introductory slides, and first I want to introduce you to our team, which we're probably familiar. I think we have tallied it up, and we've been here for the general plan 15 times? 15 times before the council. So hopefully we look familiar. I am here with Brian O., Director of Community Development, Olivia Irvin, Principal Environmental Planner, Ron Whitmore, who is a principal with Alta Planning, formerly Ramey, and Matt Maddox, who is principal with Rincon. So we are really thrilled to be here this evening, and this is a very exciting milestone to be here to have the draft general plan and the draft environmental impact report before you this evening. Next slide. Okay, so purpose of the public hearing tonight is really to conduct the public hearing on both the general plan and the draft environmental impact report. This evening's meeting will close the public comment period on the environmental impact report, which is a 45-day public comment period is required by state law, and we have exceeded that. I don't know the exact number of days, but it's a slightly more than 45. Both the general plan and the draft environmental impact report were released on March 27th. So we're here to present and receive feedback from the City Council, both on the draft general plan and draft environmental impact report. And before you are two resolutions. One, a resolution directing staff to prepare the final EIR, and the other one, a resolution directing staff to prepare the final draft general plan for adoption. Next slide. So this goes through basically what we're going to run through this evening. A presentation was published online with the agenda packet. The presentation this evening is slightly abbreviated from what is online, but this really takes you through. This is largely the same presentation that we did with the Planning Commission at the end of April. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Ron to get things started.
Great, thank you, Heather, and good evening, council members. Great to see you again, and very excited to be here at this moment in what has been a very robust, both analytical and public engagement exercise getting us to this point. As Heather mentioned, we're going to present just an abbreviated version of the folder presentation that you have in your packet. This has been one of the most in-depth and most heavily community-driven public planning processes that I'm aware of. Not going to bore you with a lot of the details, but it's been through a multi-phase process, starting with a community-driven effort for clearly establishing vision, pillars, and guiding principles that have been the guiding force for everything we've done since then, and at the same time doing an extensive set of existing conditions reports, and then went through a robust process of identifying and vetting policy, which I'll touch on a little bit more detail in a second. And during that time, and as part of that, also developed and adopted a housing element, the 6-cycle housing element, excuse me. And being the progressive city that it is, Petaluma also contracted for some Petaluma-specific flood modeling that provided an extremely helpful technical foundation for not just the flood resilience framework or element that you find in the draft general plan, but also inform many other policies in both the safety and land use element. Also during that time, the community reaffirmed its commitment to the urban growth boundary through Measure Y, and also developed and adopted a blueprint for climate action. And then concurrently with the consideration of policies, also considered a variety of options for changing land use. I'll touch on that a bit more here in a slide or two as well. And has already initiated what's a significant part of general plan implementation, which is zoning code updates, starting with implementation required for the housing element. So again, very excited to be at this point. We're getting very close to the finish line, and you've been fantastic partners in the process. As Heather mentioned, I think this is our 15th meeting with you, so it's been a great pleasure working with you throughout that time. Just quickly to recap the evolution of the policy side of the general plan. Back in 2024, after an extensive review of policy frameworks for each of the elements, after GPAC and Planning Commission feedback, you've also provided us specific guidance and direction on what to make sure we include in the various elements. And all of that input, including the council's direction, is reflected in the draft that you have before you. One thing we're not presenting tonight, but that is in your packet, are some slides that summarize by, I think, 10 high priority topics for the city and community, kind of what we generally heard, and then how we address that specifically in the elements. So those are in your packet. We also have them available as backup slides if you'd like to reference or discuss them this evening. On the land use side, there was also an extensive process of involving the public, the GPAC, and the Planning Commission. And it's really important to note that the council played a critical role in coming to the final land use map that you have in the draft GP, starting back in spring of 2024, where you provided guidance on which areas specifically in the city where we should consider land use change and the options that we should present to the public. We then went through that public feedback process, got GPAC input, got PC input, and then summarized all of that in a briefing book that we spent 3 workshops with you discussing. We then updated the designations in the map again, did some analysis on those, brought those back to you last December, at which point you gave us the final specific direction, which included both some of the land use direction specific to some designations, and as well as a few policy refinements. And just because I know a lot of public comment has been received on the direction you provided in December specific to allowing the station mixed use immediately adjacent to the SMART station, I just want to emphasize that is the only location in the city where the 8 stories that are allowed as part of that designation are allowed, and that the city, since the early 2000s, throughout the Central Petaluma specific plan area, has allowed 6 stories. And so this is not a giant leap. I think, as one commissioner mentioned at the Planning Commission meeting, this is an incremental step in many respects for the city, allowing for the intensification desired, immediately adjacent to the central transit hub for the community, and allowing for the mix of uses and affordability levels desired by the community for housing. Not going to go into all the detail again, but there's been a significant amount of public engagement as summarized by this great infographic that your communications team developed. Heather already mentioned this is our 15th meeting with you. You've been with us every step of the way and provided specific direction at the conclusion of each step, guiding us for the next steps. Likewise, we had 16 Planning Commission meetings before this last meeting at the end of April. And we set a record for advisory committee meetings with 40 GPAC meetings over the course of the planning process. You're an extremely lucky city to have such dedicated, invested, knowledgeable, volunteer community members who put in a huge amount of time to work with us and guide us and help us craft the plan you have before you this evening. I think Heather already touched on this, but we're at this point where we're concluding the formal period for EIR input tonight, and looking for your guidance from here. And then the next step after this meeting, depending on the nature of guidance you provide us this evening, is to come back one more time to certify the EIR and adopt the updated general plan. Did want to just spend a few minutes, since this draft is the first version you've seen in the kind of designed and laid out version of the general plan. Won't go into great detail, but the table of contents is a convenient overview for how it's organized. There is a concise introduction, really just introducing the reader to what a general plan is, the planning area, and how to make your way around the plan. The thrust of the plan is really summarized in Chapter 2, Executive Summary. Summarizes the planning process, the pillars, vision, and guiding principles, and then provides a summary of policy direction, which if you haven't yet, I would encourage you to read, because it provides you that high-level, integrated, kind of holistic perspective, which was really the intent all along for when crafting the general plan, is that it's tempting to look at it in the silos, but law requires us to organize the general plan to some extent by elements, but you often lose sight then of how it all comes together in a coherent, integrated way to achieve the very interrelated vision that the community has established. Chapters 3 through 7 then are thematic chapters around which we organized the elements. And then you have some very useful resources in the appendix, a full glossary. Appendix B is one of my favorites because I can never remember everywhere in the general plan where to find a particular topic, and that's designed to help you do that. We picked 20 topics. We could have done it for 50, but it's designed to really help you. Because there's so much interrelation, you can't put all policies related to a single topic in one place. We thought it would be a helpful guide for people to understand how it's so cross-cutting, and you need to consider a variety of elements for any given topic. We do it by sub-area as well. And then also there's Appendix D, which is designed to allow the city to hit the ground running with implementation as soon as the plan is adopted. This is an image we used in the executive summary just to show the way in which we think of the general plan as a consistent, internally consistent and complementary set of elements and their goals and policies and implementation actions. We really thought about this in terms of the natural foundations of the plan being critical to be the first focus, which is why Chapter 3 is featuring natural features, historical resources, safety, and flood resilience. Those things together really kind of define where you should and shouldn't grow in the future, and pretty well defines that development envelope then, which was the guide for the second layer then, which is really where you think about where you want future growth and development, both through the land use and the housing elements. Once you're clear about that, you can be very clear about what infrastructure systems you need to support that, transportation, parks and rec, facilities and infrastructure. And then finally, if you do all that right, you get all the things that people want and typically experience day to day in terms of economic opportunity, a robust creative sector, health equity, and environmental justice. And then on top, we put implementation because we know it's how important that is for the community, and want to be very explicit about the fact that we thought about it carefully and thoughtfully so that the plan could immediately be implemented, and we organized it in such a way to facilitate that and provided some tools within the plan itself as well to guide that, including, and I'm not aware of any other example in the state of a general plan with a implementation and governance element. Each element has a table of contents, very high level at the beginning, and it typically covers the major sections of the element, plus if it has figures, it provides guidance to those figures. All those things are hyperlinked. Then it has a brief background and introduction, a context section touching on statutory requirements, existing conditions, related vision pillars, and guiding principles. And then you have the heart of the element, which starts with a strategy summary, kind of giving a person picking up the element for the first time a sense of what it does, and then it has the more detailed goals, policies, and actions, generally arranged the way you see on this page here. And then the staff are working on this, as you know, they have been working on this actually while we're still drafting the GP, but the implementation element as well as the supporting appendix identify how specifically staff will be tracking the actions included in the general plan and how they'll use that as a means to monitor implementation and be able to ease status updates for council as well. At this point, I'm going to pass it back to Heather, who's going to highlight some of the things that are already being done to implement the GP.
Thank you, Ron. So some implementation is already underway, some of the things that are referenced in the general plan. So I wanted to touch on those just so you see as we are starting to close out the general plan, we've already launched or are launching some of those key implementation efforts. So zoning code update, we have started specific sections needed to implement the housing element. You recently approved the tree preservation ordinance, and we are laying out the scope to have the first bundle, if you will, of the zoning, comprehensive zoning code update to implement the general plan come closely on the heels of the adoption. So things that are called for in the general plan and needed to put the city in a good position for implementation. So that would be zoning districts that implement the new land use designation, some of those standards. Next slide. We also have well on our way with our North Petaluma Station specific plan. I think you have something coming up soon here to bring forward some discussion on that item. So that started, and an initial community workshop was held in March. So that is underway to look at that priority development area that runs, as you can see in the graphic, and includes a discussion of potential annexation right there at the North Station. Two other things that are kicking off as an update to Central Petaluma specific plan. This was also an MTC funded project and a consultant bench that MTC actually selected the consultant bench for this round of MTC funds. That is set to kick off in the next couple months, so mid-2026. And then Fairgrounds Master Plan, just at a recent meeting, you selected the consultant to kick that off in the near future. So, and infrastructure financing. So this will come on the heels of the general plan as well to update our development impact fees. We have created an internal working group looking at drafting the RFP for that. And then next steps will be updating the capital improvement program, doing those nexus fee studies, and returning to the council with updated impact fees. So a lot going on, all of these things referenced or fundamental to the general plan, and we're already moving forward on them. Before I hand it over to Olivia and Matt to dive into the environmental analysis, I wanted to touch on the key topics. This is something that Ron referenced, and more detail is in the PowerPoint. This is the most awkward place to make a presentation because I feel like I'm focused on half of the dais, but key topics in the general plan, so both on the website and in the PowerPoint that was posted with the packet. We talk about a number of key topics, what we heard from the community, and what changes were made to address those. So that list is kind of those top topics that we heard when we were out in the community. So the more detail was provided, and we're happy to answer any questions that might come out of that. I also want to point out Appendix B is a really nice resource, and again, Ron referenced this, on where to find topics. So topics such as trees, for instance, and you can see across many different elements where trees are referenced and addressed. Also geographically with the 16 sub-areas. So I think that's a really nice feature in that Appendix B. If you are kind of topic focused when you're looking at the general plan, that's a good place to go. And then natural features, there's a bit of a listing because natural features were one of those topics that were very important to the community and also crosses a number of different elements. It has a nice way of looking at how that one topic kind of transcends the specific element that it's located in. And I think with that, I'm going to pass it to Olivia to kick off the EIR discussion.
Yes, thank you. So this section of the staff report will focus on the environmental review that was conducted to evaluate the potential impacts of the proposed general plan that is also before you for consideration. So first of all, what is CEQA? CEQA stands for an acronym that is the California Environmental Quality Act. That is a robust set of legislation that establishes the framework for which guides the environmental review process, the requirements and the procedures. CEQA is a public disclosure and input process. It mandates both of those procedural and substantive requirements, such as the notification and the publication timelines, as well as an evaluation of the impacts themselves, that detailed analysis, the clause for substantial evidence, and that documentation through the public review process that must be completed prior to taking any discretionary action. The purpose, the central purpose of CEQA is to provide for informed decision making so that decision makers and the public, the community, understand what the environmental consequences are of approving or taking action on a project. Next slide, thank you. So the general plan environmental impact report, the draft EIR, is before you this evening. The general plan EIR is a broad level analysis. It's a program level analysis. So it takes that 30,000-foot view to consider those policy implications. So it is not site specific. It's not parcel specific. So with that difference at that program level, it is understood that there are uncertainties at that broad scale that across the planning horizon, those circumstances can change and things become a little more uncertain when you're looking across that long horizon and at that broad scale. And so the impact determinations reflect that accordingly. It does anticipate growth and development as designated by the proposed land use, and it recognizes that redevelopment, ongoing maintenance, improvements to infrastructure are a routine part of those ongoing activities, and that environmental changes are part of that general plan implementation. So that's what the EIR aims to get at. And finally, it is a what's called a first tier analysis under CEQA. So that is the foundational document that guides all future discretionary review. And future projects that are fully consistent with and implement the general plan may be eligible for streamlining as provided by CEQA statute. Next slide, please. So this shows the general list of Appendix G checklist items that are included as each chapter in the draft EIR. I'm going to talk through the EIR structure next. Slide, please. So this is how the EIR itself is organized. So up front, we have an executive summary that presents a table of all of the impact statements as well as the project objectives. Chapter 2 provides a detailed project description. The project description here is the proposed general plan. Chapter 3 sets the environmental setting. It's a characterization of both the existing physical and the regulatory context. So for the general plan, for the program level EIR, the physical setting is what we see and observe around town. That's the mix of existing development, infrastructure, vacant land, and open space. And then there's also the regulatory context. So that would be both local, state, and federal guiding documentation that are in place that may guide future development. So that does include the current general plan and its certified EIR as well. Chapter 4 is the evaluation and impact analysis. That's where each chapter, on the previous slide where I showed the list of environmental categories, each of those has a detailed chapter dedicated to, that follows a similar organization to talk about that regulatory setting, the impact analysis, and then the mitigation. And then each chapter does include a cumulative analysis at the end. And finally, chapter 6 is the alternatives analysis. So that's sort of the general organization of the draft EIR. This slide shows the procedural steps that are required to complete the environmental review. So at the onset, a notice of preparation of an environmental impact report was released and a scoping meeting was held. Both public and agency comments were received on the notice of preparation, which were used to inform the analysis and the discussion in the draft EIR. The draft EIR has been published now for more than 45 days, as was mentioned. That publication date was on March 27th, and today is the close of that public comment period. Tonight we are here to receive comments and direction to prepare the final EIR. And the next steps will be to prepare that final EIR and bring that back to the council as part of the general plan hearing to consider adoption, which the council must certify the EIR prior to taking action to adopt the general plan. I do want to highlight a couple of comparisons really briefly between the current certified general plan and the draft EIR that's before you. So many decades have passed since that the current EIR was certified. So this new EIR does bring the city's environmental analysis of the general plan up to date. It uses best practices and methodology. It reflects the latest modeling and projections and incorporates changes in state regulation regarding how environmental impacts are evaluated. So that could be something like level of service under the old general plan framework. Now we're in a VMT world. So that's one of the big changes. Just like the current general plan, this draft also identifies a range of environmental impacts from no impact to potentially significant. So I want to talk a little bit about the potentially significant and offer a reminder that the current certified general plan EIR does make significant and unavoidable findings for several topic areas that are listed here. And this current general plan, or the proposed draft EIR for the general plan before you now, also makes similar significant and unavoidable findings. So briefly, it should just be understood that those significant and unavoidable findings are a disclosure of potential impacts. It is an acknowledgement about those uncertainties associated with the program level analysis, the length of time under which the general plan will build out, such that context may change, technology may change, and regulation may change. So that's really the driver for these significant and unavoidable findings. And I think it's important to understand as well that these are very common at that program level. And on this slide, it shows some of the other jurisdictions in Sonoma County that have SU findings in their general plan EIRs as well. And it should just be understood that even when the most rigorous policies and mitigation are applied, there still can be a conclusion of potentially significant and the need to adopt a statement of overriding considerations, which we have here. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to provide a deeper dive on those findings and including the significant and unavoidable.
Thank you, Olivia. Good evening, council members. Pleasure to be here with you. One of the first things I'll get into is actually running through some of the findings. What I want to point out, though, is there's over 19 issue areas that we look at, including some of the other topics as well, growth-inducing impacts, alternatives. The majority of those issue areas were determined to be less than significant or have no significance. We're going to focus on the ones that had a level of significance that required mitigation, and then talk about some of the ones that, even with mitigation, were determined to be unavoidable. Significant and unavoidable. So the first group here is our less than significant with mitigation measures. We have a handful of ones related to air quality, including both construction and operational emissions, biological resources related to sensitive species and migratory birds, cultural resources related to archaeological resources and unidentified human remains, geology and soils related to paleontological resources, and one piece there is that's actually a newer piece that's included within CEQA, paleontologic resources. Used to be in cultural resources, now it's actually separated out and is in the geology and soil section. We have noise related to construction-related ground-borne vibration and tribal cultural resources related to construction impacts. A quick highlight on each of those is that generally those are related to construction and temporary impacts. The mitigation measures that are within the EIR and will continue to be enforced as part of the mitigation monitoring reporting program that will be part of the final EIR are basically advising the city when projects come up to implement construction mitigation on an ongoing basis. The majority of those would be implemented on a project level basis and then become conditions of approval for those individual projects when they come forward. Next slide. Now let's dig into a little bit about the significant and unavoidable resources impacts. Culture resources, and specifically related to historic resources. The mitigation measure requires preparation of a historic resources evaluation for any discretionary project that involves the demolition or physical alteration of a building, structure, object, or other built environment that is 45 years of age or older. Typically in California, any structure over 50 years of age is at the threshold that we determine that it could be potentially historic. The one thing to point out in California now is that 50 years old is not very long ago. So any building built in 1976 could be determined to be significant from a historic standpoint. Are buildings that are built in 1976 automatically historic? Absolutely not. The majority would not have a historic element, but we deem that we set a threshold of 45 years or older to ensure that if there's a potential historic resource, it's adequately identified and proper measures are built in. I also want to point out that the general plan in and of itself has a number of policies and implementation measures that in and of itself provide some mitigation. That includes some robust historic resources policies that are listed on the screen, with the idea that historic resources are very important to the city, and the general plan and implementation of the general plan will continue to ensure that historic resources are not damaged moving forward. Next slide. Next item was greenhouse gas emissions, or GHGs. I want to point out, as part of the process, the city adopted a blueprint for climate action that establishes a pathway toward carbon neutrality in keeping with both the community and state targets. That would require that emissions drop 40% below 1990 levels by 2030 and on a pathway to carbon neutrality by the year 2045. While the city has that blueprint adopted and has a number of implementation actions through the EIR process, it was identified that because of some recent state and federal regulations that limit Petaluma's ability to adopt a stricter local building regulation, specifically as it relates to electrification and detouring natural gas use, that we will end up falling short outside of a future action. So if in the analysis in the IR identifies that if we are not able to implement those local building standards, then we may not achieve those goals and on that pathway. Are we doing everything we can to implement that? Absolutely, but there would still be some impacts that would be determined to be significant and unavoidable in this instance. The next slide, Ron. The piece, though, that we want to share with you tonight and share with the public is that the general plan in itself implements a number of goals and policies and actions intended to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and advance the blueprint and the implementation actions that are built within the blueprint, including multimodal transportation, energy efficiency, electrification, and other climate-responsive land use and development strategies. Ongoing focus will be given to education incentives to encourage voluntary actions consistent with the blueprint. And when there are lawful pathways to implement regulations consistent with the actions called for in the blueprint, the city will do everything in its power to do that. And that significant unavoidable impact would be reduced to a less significant level. We just cannot say with certainty at this point in time that that will be achieved in the lifespan of the general plan. So we had to be conservative and make a determination that it was significant and unavoidable. The next one is noise, specifically as it relates to construction noise. Mitigation measures that are included are fairly standard mitigation measures to reduce construction-related noise within 500 feet of noise-sensitive land uses. Those are typically schools, residences, churches, as an example. And that also, that if individual projects themselves would exceed the numeric thresholds, they would need to implement some measures to build that in as well. Similar to some of the other significant unavoidable impacts, we can't say with certainty what the construction will be at any given site. As Olivia mentioned, we're kind of doing the airplane level view, the 30,000-foot level view. So we set up some prescriptive mitigation measures for individual projects to apply, and they would need to determine some site-specific and project-specific mitigation when the time comes for those projects during project review. And lastly, transportation. As Olivia mentioned, we had a shift in what the thresholds were from the last general plan in 2005 until now, the threshold being vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. The general plan itself has an aggressive plan for trying to shift growth patterns, increasing mobility options, and then therefore reducing VMT. That includes prioritizing infill and the 15-minute activity centers that were noted at the beginning of the presentation, and including increasing density around major transit hubs. However, there's a VMT gap that's due to historical patterns in the region, including major employment centers like Marin, San Francisco, and Santa Rosa, which rely heavily on single occupant vehicles. So future development patterns would still result in a per capita VMT that would exceed both the city's adopted VMT reduction threshold and the California Air Resources Board's 2022 scoping plan recommendations for VMT reductions. This reflects what we call a VMT paradox, that even though there are strong policies being put forward, those strong policies may not fully offset the regional travel patterns, such as commuting to nearby cities and a longstanding single-family suburban development pattern that exists here in Petaluma. So we have a number of mitigation measures that are intended to do the best that the city can do to implement VMT reduction, including a community-based VMT reduction program that's already in progress, adopt policies that reduce employee-based VMT. Those stem out of the GHG blueprint, and implement actions that reduce school-related VMT to the best of our ability. Another policy that came forward from the blueprint. So as Olivia alluded to, for long-range city planning documents like a general plan, significant unavoidable impacts are not uncommon. They provide transparency about the trade-offs between the potential community growth and acknowledge the inherent uncertainty associated with long-term planning efforts. These findings should not be understood as predictions, but rather are, and that they may not necessarily occur. They are simply disclosures required by CEQA at a programmatic level, and they are based on the conservative assumptions that we have and are required to do, and give us some leeway moving forward. One other piece I want to highlight is that, as required by CEQA, is EIR alternatives. We analyzed 3 potential alternatives, including the required no project alternative, which is the existing general plan continuing into the future. We had a focus on the core alternative. If you'll remember, the main driver of the proposed general plan is actually quite a bit of development within the core, trying to remove growth in the corridor. This is a more aggressive way to look at that, and then seeing what the ramifications or impacts associated with that would be in comparison to the proposed general plan. And then the opposite, which is if there's not a focus on the core, but rather most of the development would happen on the corridor, on the periphery of the city, and on the outside the city limits, what that would look like. And based on the environmental review that was done, staff continues to recommend the proposed general plan as the preferred alternative. And with that, I'll hand it back to Heather.
Thank you. And just wanted to kind of close out on the EIR discussion, that the EIR was available from March 27th to today. As we've mentioned, this meeting closes that public review period. We made sure that the EIR was available online and hard copies at the library, the community center, and City Hall, which is standard process with the city's local CEQA guidelines. So we have the comments. You have a number of the comments in your packet from what we received prior to the Planning Commission, as well as things have come in. As is part of the final EIR, there will be responses to all substantive comments on the EIR included in the final when it comes back for certification. I want to take a minute and kind of recap the Planning Commission. Planning Commission had a similar presentation and a public hearing on the 28th of April. We had, I believe it was 6 public commenters that were there in person. A summary was included in your packet of the comments from those commenters. There was a nice, healthy discussion with the Planning Commission, both asking questions about some of the things in the EIR, the general plan, getting good feedback and response. There was a conversation focused around the 8-story, the station mixed use. And as Ron mentioned, the Planning Commission really discussed it as an incremental change that we have for the last 20 plus years in the Central Petaluma Specific Plan and the SMART Code. 6 stories have been allowed. This proposal with the station mixed use on the specific parcel directly adjacent to the SMART station is looking to increase the allowable height slightly on that single parcel closest to transit. So that was a discussion among the planning commissioners and in response to public comments that they had received. The Planning Commission adopted 2 resolutions that were in your packet. One for the EIR, recommending that the City Council direct staff to prepare the final EIR, and the other being on the general plan, recommending that the City Council, after certification of the EIR, adopt the general plan. So that was a huge milestone for us, for the Planning Commission. I even think Ron underestimated. I think we decided that we had been to Planning Commission 19 times, not 16 times. So there was a real recognition with the Planning Commission that they had been part of that process, that there had been robust conversation across all of the CCBs and with the community and the GPAC, and that what is before you is the culmination of that process. So that concludes our presentation. The recommended action is to conduct a public hearing and provide feedback on both the EIR and the general plan. And then, as previously mentioned, there are 2 resolutions before you. One with a recommendation or a resolution directing staff to prepare the final EIR, and the other to prepare the general plan, bringing both back to the council for certification and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Long, winding road. No one's invited to sing yet, but appreciate getting us to this stage and bringing it up to council for what we've heard. Councilmember Shrib, a question.
Yeah, I've got 2 areas. The first area is all about biological resources, and as one of the few biologists around up here, I just wanted to just dig in a little deeper on that, particularly since we had a letter of concern come from one of our local biologists about the inadequacy of the EIR at this time for really going into the depth of our biological resources. What seems to be what was, and then I went through and read all the materials I could over the weekend to try to figure out what might be missing. And since we have seen some of the EIRs from specific properties go into very deep depth of numbers of species, plants, animals, insects, where located throughout those particular properties. And our general plan and the EIR is a lot more generic rather than, and not as specific as I was hoping to see myself. But what seems to be lacking, first one is the actually some ground truthing on the species. There is a map with certain endangered species or species of interest. Seems to be fairly limited. I was just wondering, well, I want to hear back about how much depth of research was done on specific species of concern or interest in the area was done. It's probably adequate, but I just want to just double check with you on that for that level of depth of
Do you want
species.
to break and have them address the questions one
Yeah.
off?
Okay, let's do that.
Sure. Well, thank you. So just to maybe add a couple things to that context is there's a couple different pieces of sensitive species are discussed, not only in the EIR, but also in the general plan itself. So in the natural resources section of the document, there are a number of discussion of sensitive species and the importance of sensitive species, not only for protection of those species, but also to ensure that future projects do not affect those species as well. When we're looking at a programmatic document like this citywide, and in reality, we're going beyond the borders of the city limits as part of the context of our plan area, we have to look at that high-level view. So we use a database search to determine what the most likely sensitive species are. That's a standard database that's used for almost every EIR, the CNDB database. Appendix B of the EIR has the full list of every species that was hit in terms of the radius that we're doing. When we're doing a radius that large, typically on a project level, you might do a 1 mile radius or a couple 100 feet radius in the context of that project site. For a citywide, we have a much broader list than can be typical on a project level basis. So we have a lot of species identified. In terms of mapping those, the maps, when you're listing that many species, can be quite robust, and a lot of overlap in the grain of detail that you see is hard to distinguish compared to when you're doing an individual parcel level analysis. The intent of the analysis for a biological resource section in a program AER is to set the high level bar of what is potentially occurring in the region, and then when individual projects come later and are determined their consistency with the general plan or require discretionary action where they need to do their own CEQA analysis, it's framing what those individuals projects would need to do. So the analysis in and of itself identifies potential resources that may occur within the greater city plan area, and then individual projects would need to do a more site-specific analysis at a later time, which would be more of that digging into the ground truthing, We can't send biologists to cover every square inch of the entire city at this level, but we can use some of the databases available to get a rough idea of what the resources are. And then when individual projects come up, whether it's a year from now or 15 years from now, where there might be new sensitive species that aren't currently on the list, they would do that level of detail and that level of analysis as part of that. And then we have a number of mitigation measures. There's actually 7 biological mitigation measures that are determined. And they are a kind of step-by-step analysis of what to do if there are a potential likelihood of a resource being on site. And each one progresses if there's basically if a threshold is identified that additional analysis would be done. So step 1 is to conduct a biological resource assessment. Step 2 is determining what species it is, and then having a number of steps to determine what makes the most sense in keeping with CDFW protocol or other protocols related to biological resources. Hope that helps clarify.
Yeah, I think it does. I think just a quick summary. Rather than doing a lot of ground truthing, because that would be too much, we actually did the research into all the lots projects that had been done and studies that had been done in the past, and grabbed using that research to identify the species of concern and applying it as best to maps we have. So at least we did as good as we could at this time without doing a full $1 million study.
Yeah, I guess one nice thing about the CNAB database is that is what is typically occurs. So if a species is identified on an individual ground truthing exercise, those are reported and then get added into the database as time goes on.
Right. And there was lots of text throughout the documents on where we want to go in habitat preservation and biodiversity increase. So the desire is there, the language is there for we want to take where we are now and improve. But I didn't quite find especially in the open space areas or areas that might be eventually become wetlands or river park, an actual description of the quality of the actual plants and landscape that is already there, because my impression so far it is fairly degraded non-native species throughout. So was there, I didn't see a lot of mention of that, of actual quality of open space.
Let's have that answer.
Yeah, I'll have to look more into that. I think we have a fairly detailed description of the types of habitats that exist throughout the city. Again, one of the struggles we run into is in trying to summarize all those habitats. It is a high-level analysis. So if there are suggestions for us to add some level of detail into the final ER, we absolutely could do that.
Right. I'm just looking at the possible critical areas, which would be our riverbank, Petaluma Riverbank, some of the creeks. I know there's county data on quality of our creek and creek maintenance. That wasn't quite included, but some area that you can at least reference on that area. And there are some wetlands, especially in the North Petaluma area, that we may want to do some work in. There may be some descriptions there of what's available. And then in our hillsides, particularly between us and Helen Putnam Park, there's some, the West Side Hills, some descriptions there that we may want to just at least reference, that we have some data available on that. So I was just looking for a little better overall view and analysis of the species and quality of open space areas that we do have here within Access. So as a biological resource.
And you'll be submitting a list of concerned areas.
Yeah, I can put something together on that. Then on the, let's see what else. Oh, the last one on the biological stories is we know on the lots of animal movement around the city, and there's documented with the maps going around. And we have habitats described, especially in our riparian, that movement may occur. But the person had said, okay, there may be better maps somewhere on wildlife corridors, not just animals, but also maybe some birds, bats, bees, and the like. Do we have any, how much research was done or how much background, or is there any documents out there, research that we have available on wildlife corridors of all the different species? How much is available? If not, then do we need to have that included in the
Wildlife corridors is included in the document. It's actually one of the impact analysis questions that we have as part of it. The mapping is not fully there. We have critical habitats in figure 4.4-2 in the EIR section. There's also open space and corridors included as part of the general plan. But if there are additional resources that the public or city would like to see, we absolutely can add more details in if need be.
Right, because one of the criticisms was wildlife corridor data that you were provided was not accurate to what was already been found by others in this Sonoma Mountain corridors and the like. So that's one thing to check.
We'll note that if that's a specific comment that's come in, you'll make specific redress, so you'll be able to see that.
Right, just go ahead and look at that if we can.
Yeah, and as city staff had mentioned, we have received a number of comments. If there is additional resources that could supplement the IR analysis that's already been done as part of the draft EIR, we'll absolutely include that as part of the final
Okay,
EIR.
good. I just want to check in on the wildlife and biological resources. Thank you. And the next one would be about the height level. I think I'll let others cover before we get back to the height of buildings.
Okay, who wants to jump in next on any topic? Councilmember Quinn?
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all of the community members, staff, and the general plan team for all of their time and effort on this. I know it's a lot of hours. Does the land use pattern in the general plan align with infrastructure resources? So in other words, or for example, does it plan or promote growth that outpaces our water resources?
I think the simple answer is, well, to your second question, no. To your first question, yes. Yes, there are sufficient, the existing infrastructure or planned infrastructure for the system is aligned very nicely with the future settlement pattern, helped tremendously by the fact that we're not growing outwards. And so you have existing systems built for the existing footprint. And then the infrastructure analysis was done because you, at the same time as the GP was being completed, were completing detailed water and wastewater assessments. They confirmed that systems, either existing or as planned, will support the planned growth. You had technical memos, I believe, that supported the December agenda packet in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. Was just wanted to get that on the record. So kind of another general question. On the whole, does the general plan lay the groundwork to promote flexibility for businesses in Petaluma, or does it make our business environment more rigid?
It absolutely does create more flexibility in a number of different ways. So we had a lot of discussion with the GPAC when we were going over a lot of the land use designation standards, wanting to make sure that we were building in the maximum flexibility. So there's kind of a longstanding discussion about mixed use in terms of the way it's defined in the current general plan, and there was a lot of requirements for a robust amount of retail in areas that we don't have that retail market anymore. We actually kind of lost a lot of that almost immediately after the last general plan was adopted. So right-sizing some of those requirements. There also, we have an economic development element, calls for a lot of continued implementation and effort to increase flexibility, to ease permitting obstacles. So in both the land use pattern and in the policy discussion within the document. And Ron, anything to add?
Okay, so that's great that this general plan is going to help business. Another question. On the whole, does this general plan promote the creation of homes that middle-class families can afford, or make it harder to build those homes?
We can all share.
Yeah. It greatly expands the opportunities for building a variety of different housing types across the city. So in existing neighborhoods, it pushes the city beyond the state requirements for allowing infill development. And then in those areas that Heather mentioned where we're adding flexibility through mixed use designations, provides tremendous flexibility for a variety of different types of housing unit types, sizes, to match both the shifting demographics in terms of the aging population, but also the needs for younger families to find affordable housing. So there's very much a driver for much of the GP generally and the land use and housing elements specifically.
Great, thank you. So far, it's going to help housing and help businesses. So we're batting 1,000. Lastly, does the future growth that's projected outpace service requirements? Or in other words, is it a fiscally responsible general plan?
So we did, before, you may remember, before we came back last December with the preferred land use map, we did work with Strategic Economics, who's on the general plan team, to look at the land use pattern and kind of do a gut check. Are we exactly that? Are we being fiscally responsible with the way we're looking at growth within the city? And that was included in your packet as well, and looked at it is relatively neutral, is my recollection, that the end result is almost, I don't remember the exact number, but it was very close to being neutral, even with the growth projected.
Thank you. So housing, jobs, being fiscally responsible, those are like key things that I'm concerned about. So that's answered my questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Who wants to questions next? Vice Mayor?
Hi, thank you for the nice presentation. Do we have any parcels that are going to be designated flex or that are?
No, it was created, that land use designation was created to allow the council to use it in the future. But there is nothing proposed with that land use designation in the preferred land use map.
Okay, so we are intending to keep it?
As a land use designation, yes.
Okay. And then for parcels that changed from, could have been business park or industrial or some form of commercial, for those that changed to more of a housing direction and did over these last several meetings, have we since, I know everybody that was in a zone that could potentially change got notified about it, but people who actually got changed, did they receive any sort of notification that your zoning is changing?
We sent out notification broadly and generally, but not a specific, yours is changing from X to Y at this point. After the initial, we did it initially to everyone that was seeing a change.
Okay, and so was there any sort of assessment made as to what kind of an impact that could have had on, or could have, on their future plans, their business plans, their succession plans, anything like that? Their ability to continue to pass that property or business on?
So when we did send it out originally, we met with a number of people who got notification that you may be seeing a change in your land use designation. We met with several of them to talk through the pros, the cons, what it means, what the city was looking at doing, answered questions. We also heard from a number of people who asked for other specific changes that were brought before the council. You may remember a short list of areas outside of the areas of change. Because as you may recall, the land use changes themselves are really focused on those areas of change. It was not significant change across the city, but it was focused in those areas of change, and many of them were largely lateral. So staff did make themselves available, met with a number of the homeowners or property owners to answer questions around that.
Okay, but for anybody who's actually changed, there was no, hey, this is happening, yours is changing. That didn't happen.
Well, there was very few changes from the last time we did that. So I'm not, we have not done another round of individual property owner letters.
Okay, thank you. And then for Maker Micro, I still don't understand the purpose of it. I mean, it's very similar to Business Park, and arguably the only difference has to do with food service. How come that can't just be folded in under Business Park?
As you may recall, I think it was either the April or June workshop we had with council last year. We discussed that specific question in depth, presented some options for council, and then council provided specific direction to retain both. And I believe it largely had to do with GPAC input on that particular question. And so you're right, they're similar, but they're not identical. And so at the time, council saw value to retaining both, and so we followed council direction.
Okay. Yeah, because they seem so similar to me. It's like, why not? But it makes me wonder, with the IZO not being updated and done, like, what is Maker Micro going to actually look like? Is there a reason that we're keeping that separate and on its own when it's not fully constrained and defined right now? So I don't know if anybody can speak to that, but I mean, I still don't see a purpose to keeping it.
That's a good question. I'd like to kind of paraphrase on that. When the IZO does come through, will these two have different things that we can look and contrast at that time and reaffirm that what the distinctions are, or reaffirm there isn't a lot of distinction? Is the IZO an opportunity for discussion?
So the IZO, there will be zoning districts for each of those, and they would go through each of the land uses and the permit level required. So that will look more fine-grained at which uses, what development standards more specifically are allowed in, let's say, a business park zoning district versus a Maker Micro business zoning district.
That was my last question.
Okay, thank you. And I had a couple, I may have asked this, and there's three questions I want to touch on. And the first one is, I want to be able to communicate with the public what the biggest difference between what we're doing now and what we have on the table here in front of us. And I loved slide 33 that you guys had. I'm going to come back and ask a little bit about that. And then I wanted to ask, how does the general plan treats parks? Can you rehash for the public? Do we have enough park in our inventory? How do we have a measure of service in a general plan? And then, of course, how do we afford what we have a factor into a general plan, and how do we afford what we want to have? So that's kind of the second question about parks. And then the third will go into the 8-story conversation. I believe we heard a lot of public feedback, and I think we really deserve to hit on that for a minute. So I'm thinking that the parks question is the easiest, and can we address the parks question first?
Sure. Great question. As you know, you have a very conservative attorney in Eric Danley. And he, while we were refining the final language of the parks element, had us absolutely confirm the current level of service for existing parks, so that correct me if I'm wrong here, Eric, Quimby Act, the general plan then could require dedication of additional park space as a condition of approval of discretionary land use actions in the future. And so, to answer, if I understand your question correctly, you're currently below the target level of service, and the general plan very explicitly has mechanisms for trying to get the city to its level of service goal for parks. The part of that I can't answer specifically. It's noted in the general plan as an ongoing challenge is the maintenance question. We know that along with additional park space comes additional costs of maintenance, and that's more of a general fund question that the general plan doesn't specifically address.
Is that also an impact fee discussion?
Well, impact fees cannot be used for maintenance, is my understanding, but they can be used, they are used for acquiring land and developing parks. So to actually create the parks, that's what development impact fees can be used for. And then also the general plan does identify some specific proposed parks similar to the way the current general plan does, and even looks ahead a little bit in terms of, for instance, if as part of the Petaluma North Station specific plan, if the city expanded the UGB and extend new land, then it's identifying, then we might need to look at more park space because we would be bringing in land and theoretically bringing in more population in that area that we haven't planned for. So even looking at that, some of those spaces that we don't know yet, but we want to make sure that when we do know, we're considering it and making sure that we're maintaining that that ratio of acres of park to our population.
And we're not currently projecting any of the North River Greenway as parklands at this time. That's
correct. You mean up
Lynch Creek and
north of the Weir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's.
Well, I will say there is, I believe, and it's in the current general plan, and we carried it forward. There is a, I want to say it's a 7-acre proposed park on the Johnson parcel on the east side of the river, that large undeveloped parcel. So there is some parkland in that area identified and carried forward from the old general plan to the new general plan.
Certainly our river buffers increased so much that, but a river buffer can't count as parkland, or can some extent of it can't? I mean, if it's above the 100-year, does it?
It's not, it is not the same as parkland, like in the way we identify it, but we also say, because it's open space, it's riparian habitat, it's species protection, it's not ball fields or, those kind of, but it's more, and it does call for trails and access to be part of that river buffer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to have us at a point where we say this plan got us to the point where we do meet the goal of park desired. The second part of that was, what's the biggest difference between this plan and what we have? And this you've hit on that several times. One, climate comes up again, and better address of flooding. But in your words, what would you think what's the thing you're most proud of moving us forward here? I mean, for me, I'm seeing core growth as being one of the big changes. What are the top couple things we can communicate on this?
Yeah, and I'll start, and others can add their highlights. The evolution of the single-family neighborhoods, a lot more discussion about those neighborhoods, how to see them evolve to better. Now it's working. To better serve Petalumans, and that's both different housing, facilitating different housing, smaller lot sizes, different housing products, but also a better mix of uses within the areas that historically have been single-use areas in the city, so like small, non-residential uses within those areas. Related to that is, I think, our commitment to the 15-minute centers and neighborhoods where it's more than just where your house is and then you have to drive across town to, play or shop or work, having more of that integration. So those are two things on my mind.
Great question. I had the pleasure of being involved in writing the executive summary for the plan, and so as a planner who thinks very comprehensively about what makes for a healthy, livable community, Petaluma is hitting all the, it's firing on 12 cylinders if we still had gas-powered cars in Petaluma. Just to give you a few examples, has an extremely robust roadmap and pathway for establishing an interconnected natural habitat, wildlife corridor, trails network across the city. It's not there yet, obviously, but the plan provides the mechanisms for achieving that. On the safety and climate adaptation front, again, I'm not aware of any other jurisdiction in California that has a flood resilience framework or element specifically, and the heavy investment you made in the research required to do that really well and very robustly is unique, and I think you should be very proud of yourselves for both prioritizing the preservation of the natural resource base of that river, but also protecting existing property and future people from future floods and sea level rise. And then one other I'll note, or two others, forgive me, is you have an arts, creativity, and culture element, recognizing that part of what makes Petaluma unique is your creative culture and the economic development that goes along with that, and you very much prioritize that and have mechanisms for protecting and growing that. And then finally, we've mentioned it before, but you have an element specific to governance and implementation, recognizing that the process really just begins with adoption of the general plan. You then need to implement it to achieve the vision.
Thanks.
I'll just close quickly. I do think there's a little bit of everything for everyone. There's an acknowledgement of our history. I'm so glad that you brought up slide 33, because that really touches on a lot of the points, a lot of the goals, a lot of the objectives that the council and the community wanted to accomplish, and what we all want as citizens as we get closer to that mid-century mark. So I do think there's preservation, there's something there for our current population, and we're setting our future Petaluma up for success and resilience.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the way Councilmember Quinn framed it up works really well for us all too. The housing and business, and those are important. So then the third one was all the feedback we've got on the 8th story, and there's the whole point is to hear the community when they talk, and then to be able to explain why, what you did or why you did it, and have that dialogue. So I'm anxious to have the dialogue. For me, I'm willing to wait till after public comment to continue the dialogue. But I'm wondering, are there any more questions on the dais? Councilmember Shribs.
Just since we have the North Station area north of Corona is in process of a master plan, will we be able to get at least to a point where the concepts and the plan that will be there, is that going to be, we'll have that before we actually have to do the final general plan? Is there anything unique that we need to be thinking about now for that North Station area?
So we are, this is all part of the plan, part of the big plan for general plan that really sets the scaffolding, and then we're either underway or well underway with respect to the specific plans. So there's nothing really we need to shift. It's something As an example, this Thursday, we're going to Planning Commission to have the conversation to report back to Commission on what we've heard throughout this process. And so I don't anticipate any need to course correct or anything with respect to the general plan. We're right on schedule. It'll be a separate environmental impact analysis. It'll have its own, complete process, and it would follow the hopeful adoption and certification of the general plan.
Good. So it will be limited to the 65-foot height for any buildings on that area, according to the current general plan.
So again, if there is through the community conversations, there is interest to have that conversation. It'll come before Planning Commission, come before Community, City Council. As it stands, the intent would be to build off of the existing land uses that are presented before you this evening.
Good. I just want to make sure that we have that discussion now before we talked about the smart station downtown. Thank you.
Wonderful. Councilmember Barnacle?
Yeah, most of my questions have been asked, and this is maybe a small tangential one I'm getting toward implementation. When will we see the zoning code come before the Planning Commission for first conversations?
So we are looking at a 3-phase approach, I would say, in the next, I think 6 weeks. It's somewhere in the early summer timeframe that we'll have a conversation. And then Heather alluded to it. We will either come as part of the first phase of zoning code reform would be accomplished almost immediately after the council has the general plan in front of them for consideration.
Okay. With that, let's ask for a public comment. And have we received any emails?
We received 34 comments ahead of the meeting, and any we received during the meeting we can post afterwards. And thank you very much. I do have one card and now 2 cards. If there's anyone else who would like to submit a comment card to speak on this topic, now is the moment.
Okay, let's start public comment with Darren Rackison, to be followed by Tom Gaffey.
There we go. There we go. Thank you. Tech support team here. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Darren Rackison, Planning Commissioner for the last 4 years. The heart of my comments are built environment matters. In the context of this general plan land use discussion, residents like me who are concerned about 8-story buildings around the downtown smart area and the surrounding 6-story upzoning are not morally bereft. We are not simply NIMBYs. These are members of the community who invested here, often making the biggest financial decision of their lives, and they are concerned about their quality of life and sense of place, both of which are deeply tied to the size and scale of the built environment around them. That perspective is perfectly valid and deserves real consideration and cannot be disregarded because of housing affordability challenges. Housing is painfully unaffordable in California, especially in desirable communities like Petaluma, but these costs are driven by structural forces that are largely outside local control. The cost of construction, financing, insurance, labor, speculative investment, and an economic system where residential property is expected not only to house people, but to continuously retain or increase financial value. Homeowners are leveraged, investors depend on appreciating assets, banks underwrite against an increasingly rising comp market, and construction in California is extraordinarily expensive, not to mention what is extreme demographic pressures given we have a top-heavy population keeping their homes longer than ever. So with those realities in mind, I think it's fair to ask, how exactly does local upzoning meaningfully change those structural conditions? Maybe it helps, but it's entirely possible, and I think likely, that what we will get from the proposed upzone parcels are 8-story value engineered apartment blocks that still lease for $2,800 a month. And if that's even a plausible outcome, then it's perfectly rational for residents to weigh those uncertain economic and housing upsides against the very real and permanent impact larger buildings can have on Petaluma's character, pedestrian scale, and identity. It does not make anyone selfish, does not make them immoral. It means they value the community they chose to live in. Zoning and design standards function in many ways as consumer protections. People buy into communities with the understanding that the scale and character of those places will not radically change overnight. So when we discuss deregulating height and dismissing aesthetics in the name of the housing crisis, property owners are justified in scrutinizing that trade-off. And that's my one caution or criticism in the broader discourse around this issue. At our last Planning Commission meeting, public commenters expressing concern about the general plan's proposed building heights, I did not feel were debated in good faith. I felt they were belittled. I think homeownership itself was referenced almost derisively as the opinions of homeowners, and that's not productive civic dialogue. If you believe larger buildings will have an impact on housing affordability through supply-side economics, so be it, but that is not a moral high ground. People who value aesthetics, historic character, and human-scale development above uncertain housing benefits are not bad people. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Gaffey, to be followed by Veronica Olson.
Hey guys, Tom Gaffey, thank you for having me. First off, I got to sit in on several of the GPAC meetings. If there were ever to be an award for most congenial leader, it would have to go to Ron. Holy cow, this guy runs a good meeting. And they were thoughtful enough to present to you their original plan to keep it to 6 stories at the train station. And it changed. I think it got upzoned here in the council originally. And I'd just like to add my voice back to the other voices. Let's try and keep that height down. I don't see where going to 8 stories will do anything but give the state of California a chance to have 120-foot buildings in this town. With the right bonus added, those 8 stories can go up to 30%. And I really think we need to guard our skyline. I think we need to guard our view shed. And in answer to Councilman Shrib, I love your thoughtfulness. I really do. But I think we need to be planning for the people of 2026. And I think in the year 2100, those people will be so glad that we kept our heights down. So that's all I wanted to say. Let's keep it to 6 stories there if we can. I don't see any value at going to 8. And I don't know if you guys can really cap that value out in any meaningful way. But thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Olson, to be followed by Brent Newell.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to talk tonight about station mixed-use height. You all know I've been working on planning issues for close to 7 years now. I want housing. The question is whether 90 feet actually delivers the flexibility and housing Petaluma seeks. I don't think so. At today's construction, 90-foot zoning pushes projects into more expensive building types, increases land values, and shrinks the pool of developers who can realistically build there. The state density bonus allows 98 feet with bonuses. So a 90-foot base could reach 120. I'm sorry, I can't see that as an incremental leap. That's quite a bit more, isn't it? From 65 to 120? I think that's what really the community is getting upset about, and I think with reason. The legislature already examined the economics of California capped streamlined affordable approvals at 65 feet. Why? Because it is what pencils out, and it's what people are building. So SB 79 also triggers prevailing wage requirements above 85 feet, increasing costs substantially, often by 20 to 40%. So what you're gaining in square footage, you're losing in your costs. It's like you're getting much of a muchness of nothingness. So why are we doing this? Okay. Sorry, I feel very strongly about this because I don't think that I'm against anything. I'm for the community and for our town being the best it can be. We have a very, very robust strategy. We have neighborhood, we have corridors, we have stations, and we've upzoned much of the city. We have 3 times the amount of housing that we will require in the next 20 years. That is robust. So let the community have one concession on this height. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent Newell is our last speaker on public comment tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Brent Newell. I served on the General Plan Advisory Committee. I also serve on the Planning Commission. And to answer the mayor's question, the top 3 things about this general plan is that we transition from a car-oriented transportation network to a more bike and pedestrian-friendly system that prioritizes 15-minute neighborhoods, walkable community centers with more dense mixed-use housing and commercial space. But then, most importantly, it's more dense housing and more opportunities for affordable housing. And that's what I really want to emphasize tonight. There's a lot of controversy around the mixed station designation by the Smart Station downtown being 8 stories. That is what the General Plan Advisory Committee recommended. It's what the Planning Commission recommended. The City Council downshifted and went to 6 stories. But then the Planning Commission again recommended that you reconsider that, and you did, and you reinserted the station mixed use designation of 8 stories. I urge you to retain that. You know, the status quo is 6 stories, and the status quo is vacant lots around the Smart Station. You know, 8 stories, and the related adjacent parcels, urban corridor mixed use, which is 6 stories, that allows more opportunities for affordable housing. And we as a community, we really owe it to the younger generations that are coming up in Petaluma that can't afford to live here. You know, our children, Gen Z. The fact that you are being urged to maintain the status quo around the downtown Smart Station is really a policy about erecting a sky belt in Petaluma. We already have a green belt that's constraining our housing. Let's have infill housing that provides opportunities for affordable housing for the younger generation to afford to live here. And, you know, the last speaker talked about, you know, a very tall building being a bad thing. If there's a density bonus on an 8-story designation, then that's 100% affordable housing. That's a win for this community. We don't have nearly enough affordable housing for people in our community, for working families, for teachers, for people who work for the city. I mean, we need to provide housing so that justice isn't for just us.
Thank you very much. That was our last speaker. Oh, we have another speaker. Karen? Patricia Tuttle Brown.
I did submit a letter. I had to do it really fast, so there's a lot of typos. I apologize. I had to finish it. But my concern is the Central Petaluma Specific Plans Riverfront Warehouse District, which is where I work and live. And what I'd like to say is that there's a lot of confusion that I think has to be cleared up, and that's one of the things I said in my letter, was that that plan is a little bit confusing, and the actual zone goes all the way to D Street, which would affect some of the commentary about the parcel on D Street that was the old gas station, because that's still in the Riverfront Warehouse District. What I'd like to say about where I work and live is the boulevard portion of the Riverfront Warehouse District, which in the beautiful book by Catherine Reinhardt is erroneously excluded from the Riverfront Warehouse map. I think it's important to know that. It is part of it. And My opinion is that there's T4 zoning. You're talking about big zoning elsewhere. We're talking about an area that's already been considered historic with small bungalows behind. The zoning for the area behind the boulevard is considered T4. But the area on the boulevard, because it's on the boulevard, is zoned T5. And I would like that area, entire Riverfront Warehouse area, with all of this historic language in the Central Petaluma Specific Plan, to be zoned the same way the rest of the Riverfront Warehouse District is zoned at T4. And if you look at what would happen, we're talking about the light to those little bungalows that are being preserved and honored back there, to build a wall and encourage a wall that actually, if it all is affordable, is a very big wall from 5 to 8. That's a bad thing. So I would like to see that done so that it matches, instead of considering the boulevard someplace that can just be huge. And I would appreciate it if you'd consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last speaker for public comment period on the evening tonight. I did want to lead off with, I think people sometimes forget how their words impact other people, and sometimes we get excitable, and sometimes that comes across as disrespect. Sometimes it is disrespect. But I want to know that in this room, we will try to be better at staying focused on issue and not on person. And I will try and keep a voice to that at all parts through, because that's not who we think we are. So let's behave like the people we wish we were. And then I want to offer staff a chance on that last commentary. Is there a way of synopsizing what options are on the table for the warehouse district?
I can take a crack at that, and team, please chime in if I'm wrong here. So the general plan update does not propose any changes. What Ms. Tuttle Brown is actually, so taking a step back, currently the warehouse district, the majority of it outside of 2 blocks is T5. And so we did try to have a conversation last week. I don't think I was very convincing about it, but if you look at the map, it is T5. And so what the request is to align with the 2-block carve out of T4. So basically bringing it down to 4 stories. And so again, the general plan itself, council was very clear. We did explore through the workshops potential alternatives for this area. Ultimately, there are no changes that have been made. And so council was unanimous. And so we don't see any changes. It's T5. Again, if there's an opportunity through the specific plan, Central Petaluma specific plan process to potentially revisit that, that's an opportunity for engaging with the community at a broader scale. Again, it's the council's prerogative if they'd like to explore different alternatives, but I believe the council's weighing in quite a bit on this.
Let me ask that differently. Is this the kind of thing you can synopsize in the next general plan appearance at council with sufficient detail we can see something and understand it, or are we moving past that moment quickly?
So I would think the direction that Ms. Tuttle Brown is suggesting would be to do less. So from a CEQA perspective, that wouldn't put us off course. Again, this is one specific request that's come in fairly late in the process. There is a additional layer along the boulevard. It's a three with a circle around it, so it does have an additional policy that along the boulevard it should not go over 3 stories. So I'm still a little bit at a loss of what the intent is, but what I gather is wanting to essentially change the zoning or the land use designation along the boulevard within the warehouse district to T4.
Could we bring the map up to help illustrate this?
Okay, so so that 3 and that circle that is directly abutting the beige color, I actually believe that's Ms. Tuttle Brown's home over under that 3. And so all the pink, the salmon color is T4. No, I'm sorry, T5. The yellow is T4. And so this is, we have historic bungalows sort of along that 2-block stretch right there. And so back when the Central Petaluma Specific Plan was adopted and imagined, any future development was to go no more than the T4 designation, which is essentially 4 stories. And so, as you can see, the remainder of the warehouse district, so all the way from D Street, which is where the red line is, the boulevard up to the river, is all that salmon color, which is T5. And so I believe the request was to have the frontage of the boulevard match the rest of the district, which you can clearly see it is.
Well, one of the questions I have about it is, if you look at the land use chart, it does say for TCMU, it's stepped down to 3, fronting Petaluma Boulevard, 6 with planning commission approval. So, I think perhaps that's one of the concerns is fixing that at 3 and eliminating the part of, getting approval up to 6 stories.
That's not changing.
Is that a motion? Or is that something that you need to comment on, or is that something that's more appropriate to bring back to council?
I think we'll need to do a little bit more research and get back to you.
Okay, that sounds like we'll be seeing that again.
What sort of research would you need to do to?
Well, so
if we can do that.
The intent of this was to, and we're conflating zoning and land use designation a little bit because T4 and T5 are zoning districts, not general plan land use designations. But the intent in this area was to match what's currently there. So T5 does allow up to 6 stories with planning commission approval, but there's a 3-foot limit or 3-story limit along the boulevard, so fronting the boulevard. So the intent was that's what's in the new general plan as well. So I want to look at the language to make sure that's clear, but was the intention, is to it was a lateral change and the same size, height requirements would transfer into the new general plan. So I just want to look at if there's any language in here that's not clear, because that's the intent.
So if we wanted to be in keeping with the current building size skyline in the Riverfront Warehouse District, what land use designation would we be considering if we're trying to keep it around 3 stories throughout the district?
Well, no, we were trying to keep it consistent with the existing zoning allowance, not the existing development. So yes, there are some, the warehouses are 1 to 2, let's say. The intent was to carry forward what the zoning currently allows, just for clarity on that.
Okay. And if we wanted to keep with the current development there, what would we be looking at?
We'd have to look, because that's a pretty substantial shift from what's currently allowed in that area.
And that's the kind of change that we would straw poll across the dais and see if we're interested in a change, or whether where we are in the general plan proposal is what the council wishes.
Okay. No, I'd appreciate that at the next meeting to look, and see what the options are for that.
Okay. All right. So that leaves us with the conversation about 8 stories, and I wanted to leave with one question. The story count is a single factor. There are other things that go into this. Density is also part of how a property develops, and the FAR develops or is part of it also, and any other conditions, or shall we say development design conditions. What are the rest of the conditions on that property? When we say it's up to 8 stories, I don't think that's 100% floor area ratio, and I don't think that's without other contingents of constraint. Can you describe for us, for the public, what constraints are on that?
Yeah, that would be great. So while Ron's pulling it up, the station mixed use has its 60 to 125 dwelling units per acre is the density range. It's proposed as a maximum FAR of 5.0, a maximum height of 8 stories, and requiring a floor area ratio of 0.12 of the ground floor be an active use.
And can you capture what a 5 FAR would mean on a parcel like this? If they have a central road, and I think we asked them to have a concourse through the center of this parcel,
right?
Is that counted as, how is that counted? Is that non-developed land?
The road, so when you do net acres, so density is done by, and Ron, if I misspeak, please. When we look at density, we consider the number of housing units per net acre, and we deduct roadways from the acreage. So if there's a road, if that parcel is bisected by a road, that road, the density would not be applied to that area that becomes the road.
Gotcha. And there's a public easement that's wider than the road, and the sidewalks are not in the public easement, or they are in this? And would the FAR include the floor area, the net area, would it include the sidewalks?
I think that would be in the right of way. It would not. We would be asking for dedication of a road that would include the roadway, the curb gutter, and the sidewalk would be the public and the.
So we're pretty close to saying that the building footprint is how you determine the floor area ratio, with some exceptions.
It's the parcel, so that would be the private parcel. So after you would take out the public roadway out of it, it's what's left as the private parcel.
So there could be setbacks for landscape setbacks that wouldn't be included in the parcel in the floor area ratio. Just trying to figure out how many floors you get out of a floor area ratio versus a 8-story. I mean, it's obviously not 8 stories on the full parcel. Could be 5 on the full parcel, but more likely there's some setback on certain areas and it's smaller.
Correct. And generally, you have to have some level of private open space when you develop, or there's different things that happen. You rarely just have you couldn't have an 8-story block, right? Like an 8-story square
I think
mass.
one of the fears here is that you hear it's 8 stories and you think Soviet era block housing, but that's not what architecture is these days, and it's not what zoning is today, and it's not what general plan is. The zoning of this is still to be worked out, right? What other objective standards and things that might be required on a building like this?
Correct.
And that's what we're going to see. What do we say? Weeks out? Or is it maybe further out than that?
Well, we're going to start talking about them. So every time you have a zoning district, you have your height, but you also have your maximum lot coverage or your FAR. You have your setbacks, or maybe you have step back requirements, or.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone questions? I did want to. It's not the Kevin show. Yeah, we're moving into comments. We've had public comment. We're back. Councilmember Barnacle.
Sure. I'll say what we said, at the Planning Commission when we unanimously sent it to us, that, this is fairly targeted. The build out of this general plan is roughly 3,100 people more than our existing general plan. It's not like we've raised the city or created some significant, changes in our zoning or our land use designations. Councilmember Quint hit on the things for me. This certainly promotes housing affordability. It certainly promotes a stronger economy, and it's obviously rooted in our climate goals and in our environmental legacy, our historic background, all that. At our last council meeting, Councilmember Now brought up that she was on the council when we adopted the last one, and it's important to learn from the things that we didn't necessarily nail in the last one, and I feel like we've made some fairly targeted changes to a few different land use designations that are, very intentional. It absolutely, the evidence is unequivocal that, places that are building housing are seeing rent stabilize. There's a reason why we're doing this. It's not. It's not mysterious. It's not that we, supply side economics do work with housing. And we see that time and time again where places that are building housing are seeing rents come down, stabilize, things like that. So it is, for those of us up here and in the community who are concerned that we're graduating 300 to 500 seniors every year, and we opened 30 doors of market rate housing last year, and we've averaged 110 over the last decade per year for the last decade of affordable ADUs, market rate, all of that. This is a real problem. It's that we are not providing housing for the people that we want to see in our community, and we want to see a future in our community. I'm obviously very supportive of this. As I said in the council meeting or at the Planning Commission meeting, there's a whole mess of things that I would do differently and I would push farther in certain areas, but I feel like this is a compromise in terms of, you know, the scale of change that we're promoting, in terms of increasing density in certain areas, in terms of increasing height in certain areas. So it's, you know, it's, no one would look at this and say this is a radical change to our existing, existing general plan land use element. And so, you know, I'm ready to support it as is. The thing that I do want to flag is that in the downtown mixed use, I had some, the owner or an architect for the 131 Liberty project that was concerned that we are not supporting horizontal mixed use, that, you know, in particular with the downtown, you know, designation, like we're looking to create mixed use neighborhoods, which the downtown already has a surplus of retail space, and and so we don't want to create barriers to residential only projects and things like that. And so I do want to see us make sure that we're clear on that. But other than that, I'm not interested in changing the Central Petaluma specific plan. Like that's been, there's been a lot of, I mean, for so many people, that's a sacred cow that we don't touch. So I'm not interested in downzoning that area. In particular, downzoning an area where, you know, you're basically taking, you know, you're reducing the value of people's properties unilaterally if you do that. So I don't think that's a responsible thing to do, certainly not without a whole mess of noticing and things like that, when this has been the zoning designation for the last, 20 plus years. So I don't think that's something we should be entertaining.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Councilmember Now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barnacle, for bringing up my history, because that's on my notes. That yes, 20 years goes by fast. I was sitting up here 20 years ago when we were, trying to plan the perfect general plan for the next 20 years, would bring us to 2026, where I'm sitting right now. And the perfect general plan does not consider and forecast recessions, natural disasters like fires, pandemics, federal administration changes, and high tariffs. A need for a drive-through pharmacy, yet the council did not want to change or approve any changes to the general plan when we said no more drive-throughs. So we do want to avoid making the mistakes that we might have made 20 years ago by not saying no more drive-throughs. So when I agreed to the 8 stories next to the SMART station, it was just that one parcel. And I was thinking, oh, in 20 years, my 7 grandchildren will be having children. And they will be, let's see, my oldest, Izzy, will be 35 in 20 years. 20 years ago, I had kids at home in college who were then moving out into the first low-cost housing apartments we built on Washington Street. Thank goodness, because I didn't want them living at home. And they needed to be out of the nest. So we have to think ahead to my great-grandchildren, it's hard to say, and all of us up here who have children and grandchildren, what is going to be in 20 years? And I'm thinking, okay, we could have outdoor dining, we could have street trees around this SMART station, because there's not really much, there's some rose bushes now, but there's not really much landscaping that people would leisurely have a cup of coffee and sit outside the SMART station, and the the arts center is right there. What a wonderful walkable community we could build. And I don't like change any more than anybody else. I'm old Petaluma all the way. So I don't mind going back to 6 feet or 6 stories, but I was thinking that 8 stories would have step backs with a lot of open mixed use underneath where the community could flow kind of like they do in the city around, little barista tables and chairs like they are in Europe and in Greece. That's how it is in Athens, and a lot of trees. So those are my suggestions and what we want to visualize for that one parcel. And I look forward to more comments from the council.
Councilmember Shribs?
Yeah, so I'm going to reverse my prior vote earlier, or I shouldn't say vote, but my preference. I'm going to go back to the 65 limit versus 8 stories, because I can see that at 6 stories and 65 feet is a lot of housing. That's still going to house several hundreds of people, many hundreds of people still. And I'm looking at the economics and looking at affordability. Gee, if the state came in, we say 6 stories, we say 65 feet, and with state laws, that could be 8 stories. So if it's affordable housing and someone comes through with affordable housing at 8 stories, height, and then with all the setbacks and everything, we'll get our 8 stories, we'll get our plenty of housing. I'm also looking at the amount of housing, which Veronica mentioned, is the volume. We've upscaled so much all around town. And the real, my view of after lots of housing webinars was the real volume is going to come from taking out single-family homes and building it quadruplexes up to 10plexes in single and dual lots. And that's where financially we're really going to build most of our housing. So, and I'm looking at the volume of people in that particular spot and the congestion that we're now facing now, even if most of those folks don't have a car, some of them will, and getting in and out. Because I just spent close to 10 minutes getting across 3 blocks of D Street yesterday, trying to get through on a section of there because I hit the train traffic, I hit other things, street lights, and then the bridge went up. So between the bridge and the train, it was 10, 15 minutes before I got to 3 blocks. So we have congestion in that area. We don't have a good plan for that, resolving that congestion at this point. So I'm thinking that 65 feet, 6 stories, limit, keep it consistent. The largest thing we have over 65 feet are all agricultural structures, which is our history, agricultural town. I want to retain that. And so I'm hearing the folks say they want to retain that philosophy, that idea, our feeling of that. And I'm thinking if we make it 8 stories and something does get built, that is going to have enough of an impact on the view shed and everything. It does change a little bit of our character. And I think we can maybe do something over at the North Station as a possibility outside of the area if we want to do something there. Maybe that's a possibility of putting it out there, the 8 stories. That's a little bit outside of the field, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. So I'm in favor of going back to 65 feet, 6 stories in that spot. It's the one and only spot. We don't need to be pushing the limits on that one spot. We're pushing the limits all over town. And so that's my perspective on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Quinn?
Thank you. Yeah, so just going back to the warehouse district, I see what's happening in that neighborhood today and really excited about the revitalization with it. We have lots there now that are undeveloped. The 6 stories are, were possible up until now. That's what it was zoned for, and nothing's been built. I think downzoning that is a mistake, personally. In terms of the 8-story, for many of us, I'm gonna exclude me from this. I've been a Petaluma resident since 2010. Petaluma, it's my home. I'm raising my child here. I love it here. I plan to retire here and live out my days here. For many people who have lived, in this town for generations, it feels like just yesterday that the theater district was built, when in reality it was built 25 plus years ago. The Adobe Winery building is the first building that's been built in downtown Petaluma since then, 25 years. I don't think another building's been built. We have tons of vacant lots and nothing can get built. We've built the number of new homes in Petaluma last year, Kevin, 100. And out of 100, how many were affordable?
41.
And how many were market rate?
Well, then subtract ADUs, 27 out of that, leaving 31 market rate housings.
31 market rate housing. And
high market.
Yeah. But my point is, nothing's getting built. And maybe in 25 years, I'll eat my words. But honestly, even if we go to 8 stories, I think it will be a miracle if anything gets built on that station. I hope that someday it does. But I think that creating some flexibility, and the more flexibility that we create on that property, the more likelihood that in someday it will get built. But honestly, I'll be shocked if it happens in the next 25 years. So my preference is that we, keep it as it is. We honor the GPAC's recommendation. We honor the Planning Commission's recommendation, and we maintain a little bit of political fortitude, and we leave it as it is. By the way, I'm going to digress for a moment. I want to just recognize Tom Gaffey. Tom, I recently heard the story about the art installation at the museum, and I was just shocked and was, everything that you represent makes Petaluma special. Like, we all love downtown Petaluma. Everything I'm wearing right now, I bought at Louis Thomas, right? I buy all of my books at Copperfields. We make a point of shopping in downtown Petaluma because we love it and we want to preserve it. And a big part of that history is the contribution that you made. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
So I've got quite a few things to say tonight. So I'll start with, land use and zoning. Going back to my questions about Flex, it's been, I think, almost 3 years now since that began. Nothing's been designated Flex. One applicant tried and the council said no. And so here we are talking about the general plan, and if there was a need for it, I would think that we would have made at least one of those properties Flex, but we didn't. Council didn't want to do that. And so I think that we should be getting rid of it. I don't see a purpose unless there's something down the road that I'm unaware of. But and I think the idea of Flex also kind of goes against the idea of having zoning or a general plan, because it's anything and everything. If you can land that as your, on your parcel, you can be Flex. So, but again, nothing's ever happened with it, and so I don't see why we've actually got it. I have been concerned, and others in the community have been concerned about why are we not doing the IZO at the same time parallel with the general plan, because we're making a lot of decisions in the dark here because we don't know how some of this land use is actually going to look. It's not written. It doesn't exist yet. Yet here we are making these big decisions right now, and then being told, well, we'll worry about the IZO later. I think that's led to a lot of confusion, I think, in some of our decisions at these meetings. And then I still don't see a point to Maker Micro, and again, that ties into what I just said about the IZO. It's let me see here. Yeah, I don't know. I worry about all the infill that we're talking about and how we're mixing up zoning right now. And again, to me, it kind of defeats the purpose of actually having zoning. You have areas that are commercial, are industrial, are retail, are housing, and we're putting that in a box and shaking it up here. Like one very real example that's happening right now is, you've got residents that are in the Riverfront Warehouse District who, it's a newer development. There's people that live there, and understandably, nobody wants to hear a lot of noise. And right across the street, you have an industrial business that does make noise because they're a business. That's what they do. And now mixing everything up like that has created a battle where you've got residents who are upset, you've got a business that's kind of upset too, and they're trying to find some kind of happy medium, but it's because at some point the city allowed these two things to be right next to each other when they probably never should have been. And so I have a lot of concerns that we're doing more of that with this general plan, and ultimately I think the one who loses in that is a business. They're the ones that you can go after and put noise ordinances against, or put constraints about when they can actually operate and do business. And to me, that's something that hinders business and actually hurts it. So I've seen a lot of that in this new plan, and I don't think we should be doing that. I think it's a mistake for the future. I asked questions too about, properties that are getting changed from commercial, industrial, or some form of to housing or something similar. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with housing, but we don't know what people's succession plans are, their plans for their business. And so if one day when they're done and retired, or they want to sell, or whatever happens, they might not be able to now because their zoning's different. And so what are we doing to those businesses? Are we forcing them to sell now? Or are they going to have to work till they're 100 years old to, and it's going to totally mess up their retirement plans? So we should have been reaching out all along to those businesses that were actually going to be changed, or any parcels that did receive change in a way that's going to potentially have a massive impact to their future. So I'm concerned that we didn't do that, and I don't know why we didn't. I don't know. I don't understand that.
Can you give an example of a business that's had a massive change? Because I feel like we haven't made any real massive changes without the business park that requested it. So can you give an example of a business?
Sure. Over on Petaluma Boulevard North, you've got Jay and Bill's, you've got Brody's next to them, you've got Shotwell's, and I believe Jay and Bill's is now Maker Micro, which we don't know what that means. He doesn't know what that means. You've got Brody's, which is, let me pull it up here. Going to neighborhood center mixed use, and that's an industrial property currently. Or those properties, that's several properties. So the city, never asked them, hey, do you really want this? Or, hey, this is what is happening. And now they're going to be kind of forced to live with it, I think.
Let's ask staff if they want to weigh in.
We did send notification out to all property owners that were seeing a change in land use designation. If they were, let's say, industrial to residential, or a change like that, we did send a letter out to all of those properties, letting them know that there was this conversation happening and there was a potentially a significant change, and gave them the opportunity to come talk to us. So if it was something significant like that, they did receive. That was what we did. We sent
Correct. Everyone received a letter that things were going to potentially change. But now, as the draft sits, there's going to be real change, but they don't know that necessarily from the city. Correct?
We haven't sent another individual. We have given them resources. We have offered to meet with them. We have given them links to information to follow the process. If they have reached out to us and we have that information, they've been able to add to notification lists that have gone out at the different stages.
So let me ask one further question on the hypothetical here. If a business changes hands, does zoning constrain them? You know, let's say the future zoning. Is a business grandfathered in, and if it changes hands, does this business remain?
If it's a legally established business and it doesn't vacate that use for more than a year, it can continue.
And if they make modifications that on the property that like expand it or something like that, are they allowed to continue that business on that property even though they're coming in for a building permit?
We would look at that. So you can't expand a legal nonconforming use. So that there's provisions in the zoning code about what you can do with a legal nonconforming use. You can continue it as it is, as it was allowed. And happy to look at individuals' properties on the changes, but to Councilmember Barnacle's point, most have been very lateral changes. And if it, for instance, if it was a commercial property, I believe Maker Micro, the whole idea with that was to be very flexible, except for residential, to be very flexible with non-residential uses, so that the options, if it's currently a non-residential use, that's a very flexible designation, except for the residential, and that is in areas where we're anticipating increased flooding.
It's supposed to be more flexible, but we don't know yet. It's not fully defined and constrained. So
that is the battle that we have in front of us for the IZO, yeah.
Right.
That's right.
And so, I'll kind of drop that, but I mean, again, like any properties, parcels where something like that's happening, I would appreciate, and I would think that the city would want to reach out to those folks and see if they are okay with it. And if they are, that's fine. But if this is going to impact them in some way they didn't foresee, we should be reconsidering what we've done. Then, excuse me. Then, onto the 8-story building, that conversation. I've talked a lot about, what do the Senate and Assembly bills do to us as far as housing goes. There's so many of them. There's so much that overrides our local control. We have very little tools and ability to actually do anything. When those projects come through, there's really no stopping them. And, I think it's important that we have tools to control how our city grows. And one way we can do that is, obviously, around the train station, the idea is to put a lot of people there, but again, we're trying to protect, the aesthetics, our skyline, our sense of place, the people who live here now. That's why a lot of people live here is because of that environment that we have here. And so one of the tools that we have is, we could do something like limit the height around the train station to 4 stories. Knowing that with density bonus law, it could go up higher than that. And then we could get about the height that everybody's comfortable with. So we could lower the bar around it, knowing that with the density laws, it could get up to more, a little bit higher, but not something outrageous like 8 stories. That would change the town, and that would probably be, the first domino and more to come down the road. And so it was articulated very well by several people from the community. Thank you all for speaking. But our job is to take care of the people that live here now. We should be considering the future generations, but not at the expense of those who live here now. You know, this general plan is about looking out into the future, but it's also about what we've got right now, who lives here right now, and those are the people we need to be taking care of most. You know, and as well, it was said too by the public, you know, talking about increasing the height that's going to increase the value of the land. Land's already extremely expensive around here, and it's not going to just affect the, you know, the land in question. It's going to, that's going to ripple out to all the land around it, and then that's going to go up. So that's not necessarily making anything more affordable. We're, you know, increasing the value of that land. So I don't think that that's something we should be doing as well. And then, you know, the last thing I want to say about, I would like to talk about, you know, our economy and industry here. And at the beginning during questions, you know, it was talked about that, yes, this is going to be good for jobs. Yes, this is going to be good for industry and the economy. But we didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we changed one parcel to industrial. You know, we only changed industrial properties to different forms of housing. So we've lessened the pool of potential economy. And then, you know, at the same time, we've taken some critical areas over time of industry, you know, specifically along the river, specifically along the railroad tracks. And those are unique forms of transportation we could be using that actually help build Petaluma. Petaluma is here because of the river. It grew because of the railroad, and that was because there was industry all along it. And now what we're doing is changing that to housing. And again, we do need housing. There's nothing wrong with it. But those are areas and corridors that I think that we should be protecting. We should be keeping those industrial. And even though some of them, yes, they are vacant now and maybe have been for several years, this is where we're talking about the general plan and what the future holds. We don't know if that need is going to arise in the future, if river transportation is going to come back, if rail transportation is going to come back, and they should. It's a lot greener. You can move huge volumes of cargo and goods by river, by rail, and that would help us meet our climate goals. I think that would be a good thing. We should be protecting those things instead of turning them into housing. So I don't see how the general plan improves industry here and jobs, you know, because the other thing we talk about with jobs is we need to put housing all around the train station so people can go to their jobs. Well, wait a minute. Don't we want them to have their job here in Petaluma? I don't want our town to be a commuter town. So our focus should be creating those jobs here, or at least making it easier for those jobs to appear here, and not making it all about packing housing in around these crucial areas of our town, or creating height that is not what people who live here want to see.
Thank you. I forget, Councilor Cater Thompson, did I offer you a chance in yet? You already weighed in?
I agree with Councilmember Quint, and the clothes I'm wearing are from Ethical Clothing, and I shop in my town.
Okay.
And I have kids that I have grandkids, and I would like to see them live here. Not everybody has an opportunity to have families that own homes that they can move into. We have to look at the generations that are not as lucky. And we need housing in this town. We have Measure B is on the ballot, and that's about the SMART train. And housing should go, high density should go around our SMART station downtown. We've been talking about this for 30 years, that we need housing down by the SMART station. And we're not moving forward. And then we talk about height. It's always restrictive. And then we have projects that come through, 6 stories. Can't do it. And it hits our pocketbook, so people can have better roads, parks, police, and fire, and we have to look at the economics of what a general plan brings to our community. And I think that all the people that live here, I don't think they don't want people to move into Petaluma. I think I certainly appreciate my young neighbors that are moving here. And I want to see housing that is affordable, but I also want to see a mix of housing, not just rental. So we need to start looking at a mix, and that's what I think this general plan does. And when you have a rail in the heart of your town, just 2 days ago, I met somebody that was walking to the SMART station, and he was just talking about how great it is, but then he started talking about the property around the SMART station and what it looked like. And I was talking to somebody else, so this is just within the last week, about the SMART station. They really like coming here, but they don't feel really comfortable walking into downtown from our SMART station. So I think we either start moving forward, but we can't restrict development, which our council member now, I appreciate that, it really restricted growth because of the limitations. And so either we want to stay stagnant where we're at, or we want to move into the next century. And, a lot of us aren't going to be here, but we do need to have a general plan that is for the future. And I was raised in a family, and I've been in Petaluma my whole life. We wanted people to be in this town. People came to our ranch. They bought eggs. They knew who we were. But we didn't want them not to be here, because that was kind of our bread and butter, and I want to finish. And it was our bread and butter. And so we really appreciate all the people that moved to the east side and the people that came from all around to come to our ranch and buy, whether it was the fried chicken, the eggs, the dog food, whatever it was. And that's the kind of town that I want to see, is one that's really welcoming to new people that are coming in here, and not just stay stagnant with my age group.
Thank you.
I do want to say one thing. I do appreciate you talking about the makers, because, that was kind of confusing. What does that really mean? And to me, now it sounds like it just means that businesses can stay as is in these areas, but in the future, they can make changes if they want to. And I think that's what you want, is have that flexibility for existing businesses to have the flexibility. And I think that's really important. That is part of it. So it makes much more sense that's why you have certain designations for flexibility, and that's important.
Thank you. In a minute. I really appreciate the general plan. It's very housing forward and quality of life forward. And I'm hopeful that pivots it from what we've seen over the past years, where we just haven't built much of any housing. We have this one apartment building here or here, but our numbers are really low. And the greatest impediment to business in Petaluma is labor. And labor is related to having housing and having affordable housing. So I look forward to this as a business forward, the way we were talking. This is business forward if you have labor in the area. And labor is consumer, so I'm kind of like the consumer to make the economy go around. That's all a good thing. I'm not worried about the taller building from a variety of reasons. One, the concern that it's more expensive because it's prevailing wage. Two feedbacks on that. One is prevailing wage is good union jobs, and I'm all for good union jobs. And so I don't want to say prevailing is bad. And prevailing starts with every affordable housing. Once you take a nickel from a government agency, no matter how many stories you're building, you're under prevailing wage laws. Or you put in a new water pipe for the city, you're under prevailing wage laws. That's a system we have in place right now, so that there are good jobs, but there is still profit opportunities for those who are non-union shops. I'm really glad to have that. I'm really glad that the GPAC recommended this, and I appreciate you being here to mention that, and that the Planning Commission signed off on that. And it wasn't something out of the box the council came up with this density on this one lot. And really happy that we're not talking a big box of 8-story. We're talking about a well-designed facility that would be there. And that'll happen because we all still pay attention in the next step with it. We're not done tonight. We're paying attention as we get into the zoning ordinance. And I do appreciate that any added height over the 8 stories would only be in terms of an affordable housing. And while I will stand up and say that we need housing in every demographic, I mean, if there's no housing that doctors like to live in, we lose our hospital. We need to fit every demographic, and we need to build different typologies. But I don't know that I'd want to build them all out at Corona Station. I think if we can cluster people where there are developed areas where you're closer to transit, that's just a better climate and financial sustainability position. I wouldn't want to put too much further to the outer areas. And if we did use the outer areas, that's likely where the doctor housing goes, and it's not going to be tall out there. So I kind of view as which one of the ponies in this race is going to cross the finish line first? And I'd like some of each type to work. And since we've not achieved at things, I see loosening up on this one parcel as a very incremental and modest change. I would be hopeful that one good thing happens. I'm not fearful that all the things will happen. Pretty much, I appreciate everything we've done to get us down the road this far, and I think we've crafted it in. I concur. I don't want to open up the Central Specific Plan again. We're pretty good on that, and we have another specific plan to roll out on top of that. So we've planned ourselves into a pretty good place, and I'm ready to move it to the next level. Did we have any more comment here? Councilman Barnacle?
Yeah, I think we are a commuter town. There's 18,000 people who commute into our city and 20 that commute out every day. I think only 20% of the people who work in our city live here, right? Like that was from the initial studies that we did, right? So, and the reality is that ever since the automobile came about, like we live regionally, and that basically completely disrupted the land use paradigm and the transportation paradigm that we had when cities were initially even conceived. And so what we're trying to see and what we see with Santa Rosa and their building and San Rafael and these other sort of, like those are becoming the sort of main job markets for our region, and, connecting, a regional job market, and providing access to the regional job market is the future of our, of the North Bay. And I think that cities, the responsible thing to do, like having a train is nice. There was a guy, Davin, when we were looking at the initial the North Station project, he said, Smart Train is going to be a ski lift for the wealthy, and Petaluma is going to be a town for the rich. And that's it was a comment made about that we are we're not doing the things to make the Smart Train actually a viable alternative for us. And what that means is we're not the land use paradigms, we have not built transit-oriented communities. And until we do that, the Smart Train is a costly piece of infrastructure that we are investing in, but the return on the Smart Train comes when we actually build transit-oriented communities and link together major job centers and housing centers. That wasn't what we were founded on, 100 plus years ago, but places change, and the future of our community is, certainly people living in more dense walkable areas. And so I hope that I'll move this item as is.
Thank you. We have a motion and then a comment.
I just have a comment because Councilmember Barnacle brought up that only wealthy people were going to use the Smart Train. Well, that's not true. What we find is it's like something like 30% of lower income actually use the Smart Train, and it's really proportional with who lives here and the ratio.
Right.
Yeah, so I just want to be real clear on that. It's not for the white wealthy people.
That came up at a meeting in the, and that contention was raised at a meeting. The general manager, Smart, was in the room. And,
exactly.
And launched into a defensive, don't call us that.
Yeah, exactly.
Councilmember Shribs?
Okay, just adding a comment, something to think about. On the hotel downtown, 6 stories, and it's only 120 foot by 60 foot. And people are complaining about the building mass, what it would feel like right there. And we're talking about several acres, several hundred feet long, a couple hundred feet wide, and 8 stories tall. Think about the massive building that would create, even if you made it pretty and nice, all that looking, that massive structure, I think would just completely change the character of our downtown. So that's what I'm worried about right now, the look and feel. And I'm also worried about the economics as far as getting it built. From what I'm hearing, it's not going to be 6 or 7 or 8. It's going to have to be 10 stories, affordable housing, so that they have the bonus. And then it becomes possible to pencil at 10 stories. Okay, you take 10 stories, which if we say 8, they can do 10 legally. They're in. They make it massive. They put in, instead of 800 people, they put in 2,000 people, and they make it work that way. So the amount of people and the massiveness of that buildings in that spot, I don't think that is a practical or reasonable way of going about this. So that's what I'm worried about in the volume and size here. I think it's out of character. If they do that in Santa Rosa, fine, but here in Petaluma, I'd have to agree with the folks that have talked to us and sent us information in and said they don't want that. And I think we need to listen.
Could I suggest we do a straw poll on it just to see how everybody feels and look at changing that to either 3 or 4 stories, knowing that it could go up with density bonuses versus who wants to keep it at 8?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a good idea. I do want to say that our letter writer public person tonight said that the Tensar, UC Berkeley Turner Center, said that 6 stories was the sweet spot, and 7, 8 was the problem. And so, you don't need to put in an 8 because no one's going to use that. That's the same flawed logic of us trying to decide what a builder will do. So I'm okay with having just a lot of different theories and us putting a palette on the table. But I like your idea of a straw poll, so I'll just work it this way. So those who wish to keep it at 8, can give me a show of hands and see where we're going here. So we've got 4, and so I think it'll carry at 8. So this is our first reading. We have a motion on the floor. And do we have a second?
Motion for moving the general plan forward, or is it specific to something?
It is, I'm sorry, for the motion maker.
Yeah, to move the general plan and the EIR forward for production.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And a roll call vote, please.
Barnacle?
Aye.
Cater Thompson?
Yes.
DeCarly?
No.
Now?
Yes.
Quint?
Yes.
Shribs?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Motion carries with Councilmember DeCarly voting no.
Thank you very much. And that closes us out. It's a milestone evening. Thank you for being here tonight.